Let me open a special public, special meeting, City Council, City of Pearland, for Monday, August the 7th, year 2017. Appreciate all of you being here. Let's move in our work, in our order of business. Purpose of the meeting is a new business item, which I'll ask Councilmember Moore to open and present for our consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action regarding resolution number R2017-147. So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight, this is a special meeting. We have one item, and this is consideration of an existing engineering services contract, part of our surface water treatment work, and Mr. Epperson will give an overview of that work.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I'll be brief. This contract was awarded by the council on April 24th. It was for package 3 of the surface water treatment plant, which consists of the preliminary engineering for the pump station as well as the distribution and supply lines coming out of that'll eventually come out of that plant. The contract was never executed, and we have looked in with the Texas Water Development Board, which is our funding source for this project, and rescinding the contract does not have any implications to our funding sources. So if there's any other questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Does that complete your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I'd like to ask Mr. Dannenbaum would come up and make a few comments. And thank you for being here tonight, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor, for allowing me to speak. On a subject very important to us, let's be perfectly clear. We furnish documents in a very broad government investigation in South Texas. No employee of our firm has been charged with anything. We've cooperated fully with the government's investigation and have provided them all of the documents they requested. While we have no definite information as to the current status of the process, because as you know, government investigations are confidential. It would appear from the newspaper coverage of the search warrant that was served in Laredo on a particular county commissioner that he may be the target of this investigation. Let me be clear that this Webb County commissioner is a friend of ours, and last year we gave him a legitimate political contribution by check to his campaign fund, which was fully reported. That is all. This year, not involving the Webb County Commissioner, we were awarded a design contract for a major road in Webb County, which includes Laredo, by TxDOT. Our firm had done considerable pro bono work developing that project for the county to justify it for TxDOT, the need for a major thoroughfare connecting the international truck crossing with Interstate 35 to reduce pollution and congestion in Webb County. The authorization for the project came through their Metropolitan Planning Organization, which you're familiar with your participation in HGAC in this area. TxDOT at the highest level agreed and gave them permission to seek statements of qualifications for design firms, to which we responded. TxDOT reviewed and approved statements of qualifications and authorized them to go forward with a request for proposal, which we submitted. As you know, these are not price-based proposals. They're quality based on staff, experience, knowledge of the project, quality requirements that are totally unrelated to price. Our firm submitted the successful proposal and was selected on a qualifications basis. The next step by TxDOT was to authorize Webb County to award an engineering contract for what is called a locally sponsored, TxDOT-funded transportation project. The contract we were awarded is not a county contract. It is a TxDOT contract, which has been through all of TxDOT and federal procurement procedures, because there's federal money involved in this as well as state money. It is becoming increasingly apparent that there is no corrupt transaction involving our firm. Turning to Pearland, to your possible concerns, we and our sub-consultant teammate, LAN, worked very hard on our proposal to you for your water resources project. We believe we won it fair and square based on the qualifications selection process that you conducted very strictly and accurately in our opinion. We and LAN are in a position to give you excellent service on this project. Our investment in computer redundancy and reliability, which includes backup of our own server network and offsite backup, with flood-proof, burglar-proof, bomb-proof offsite backup facility, assures that continuity of our projects always moves forward without interruption. Having maintained the highly skilled staff on our payroll as proposed for the project, in this intervening time, it would be a significant financial hardship on our firm for that decision to be rescinded at this point. There has been nothing said or indicated by the government in its ongoing investigation that remotely relates to Pearland. We respectfully ask you to confirm the decision previously voted by this council as recommended by staff to select our firm and our teammate to provide this very important project for the city of Pearland. I'd like to point out that our other clients are sticking with us, including the City of Houston, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and TxDOT, to name a few. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your consideration, and we appreciate the opportunity to present our side of this story to you. And I promise to be brief, and Your Honor, that concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I appreciate those comments. If you have a copy of that, perhaps you could give us give Mr. Branson a copy of that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Back to you, Mr. Pearson.
We have no further comments. We'll stand by for questions, Mayor.
Does that complete your staff report?
Yep.
Complete your staff report too. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Does the council have a position? We do have motion and second on the floor.
Mayor.
Mayor, Councilmember Owens.
Good.
Yeah, Mayor, I don't know if anybody was speaking on it or not, but I feel like, you know, on this, I wasn't here for the executive meeting that was had, but I've read the transcript on that, of the history on that. I don't think it's in the best interest of the city to go back out on this. I think anything that was done during this period of time on there, I don't see anything negative about it. There's a qualification package that went out. People are selecting on quality firms. I know Dannenbaum Engineering for a long time, and they do really good work, and then they've got a good backup as a sub on there with LA&N, and very strong in water through that, and transmission lines and what have you. But, you know, when you come to look at it, there's been few investigations, you know, that's fine. People have investigations, but nobody's been arrested or any determination has come to pass after this investigation, so I don't see it has anything to do with this. I did make a call to Austin today, talked to the Deputy Executive Director at TxDOT, because they are a major client with TxDOT. TxDOT is not going to do anything about it. They're looking, continuing doing work for Dannenbaum Engineering, and I think, you know, their quality work and the history of it, so they're not concerned about it. I think what is it, Texas Water Board is not really worried about it. I think as far as the money that was borrowed by the city from them. So I really don't see any reason at all to rescind the contract. I think, you know, if you looked in here and it looks like it going with a second firm on that, which I don't think that would be right since the number's already out on what has been selected amount. I think you're going to delay the project for several months. I think you're going to probably have a higher price on it, on the negotiations on it, because this, whatever this awarded for and the amount is known, so that's the floor where people start out on the negotiations. So I can't see any justification for coming in and rescinding this contract at all. There's nothing legally or illegally that has been found, has been stated, has been proven, or anything else. So, my take on it, I think it's just a big waste of time to do it. So that's pretty well all I got to say about it.
Okay, Councilman Perez?
Thank you, Mayor. Respectfully, Councilmember Owens, I struggle with this, and this is why I personally brought this to the attention of staff to have a conversation about this. One of the factors that we consider when we are electing consultants is the amount of litigation they're in. We're not the only ones. Every other governmental entity asks for a request of ongoing litigation. That's a factor. There was a time period, oddly as it timed, where we had recommended Dannenbaum to get the award, but the contract hadn't been signed yet. In that, these issues came up. I think that had these issues been were in place prior to the award, that would have affected the award. I think that if these things didn't come up till after the contract was signed, that would have affected whether we terminated the contract and looked somewhere else. But there was just this odd period. I think that, look, I've got friends that work in Dannenbaum, so as you. You know, it is not lost on me the impacts this has on the company. But I have concerns that because of this issue, that there are other factors that may affect the ability for this work to be performed, and there are other engineering firms that don't have those concerns. And therefore, I would prefer that we send this back out and find a firm that does not have this ongoing cloud that can still perform this work. Now, I'm not saying that Dannenbaum should never be allowed to do work with the city of Pearland ever again. I don't want to blackball them. I don't want to say anything negative about them. But I think for this particular issue, until some of this is cleared up, I think we owe it to our citizens to make sure that this is cleared before we issue a contract to this company. It would give me more comfort. It would give the citizens of Pearland, I think, a little bit more comfort. And I think that's the way I would prefer to go.
I tend to agree with Councilman Owens. These people have not been convicted of any wrongdoing yet. Investigations happen all the time. It's going to take time to go back out and get bids on this, so I'm probably going to vote no on rescinding the contract.
Or no?
Thank you, Mayor. I see both sides. I'll be honest. I wish it could be cleared up in time for us to do the contract. I don't think that'll happen. Good, bad, or otherwise, our justice system does take a very long time to move forward. But I'm going to lean towards the more conservative side of let's go back out and see what else, what other options are out there for us. Not that, you know, we don't know if there's been any wrongdoing, but if it does prove there has been, it could be a black cloud on the city moving forward on what is the largest project to date in the city, and possibly the largest contract the city will do for a very long time. So I understand I'm being ultra conservative on this, but that's where I stand at this point.
Okay. Councilman Reed
No comment, Mayor.
and Councilman Moore?
I also side on going out and seeing what other options are out there. I too feel that this would be a stigmata hanging over us if it came to be where there was wrongdoing found. We've gotten rid of other companies for similar issues, just to keep it nice and clean in the city, and we don't have that stigmata. So I'll be a no vote on this.
Okay. Okay.
About to say.
Yeah.
Mayor,
Okay,
did say
at
no.
this point, we need.
Mayor, let me just clear up one thing real quick. Good.
Okay, make short comments.
You know, I'm very short on comments. You know, the point is, nobody's been convicted of anything whatsoever. You know, we just put people in jail for stuff that they, you know, and this is a timeout. I just don't think it's right for doing that if nobody has actually come up and done anything. And it doesn't hit the character of the company itself. And then the other side of the coin is, you know, the thing about it, everybody carries insurance on this. And, you know, and if they can't perform, then they got insurance to take care of that. So I don't see a negative on this, to be honest with you. I mean, council can do whatever they want to do, but I don't think, you know, this. I know that, you know, AECOM's going through the same thing. Not doing it now, but they have in the past. PB, the company I work with, went through the same thing. But, you know, they've not been helped off on any of the contracts they've ever had on there. And so this is just the way it is. But somebody to come out and, I don't know of any charges other than the charges for the city of Laredo that's been done down there, and it was with, you know, the city where they locked up everything. So, having said that, I think it's a waste of our time to go out and resubmit on this thing again. But if we're not selective on this and we do rescind it, then I'll say, yeah, we're gonna go out again.
Okay. Any other comments, Council?
I'd just say briefly, I think a good analogy is if you're hiring somebody and you've got two people who are equally qualified, and one you find out is under investigation for even a misdemeanor, a minor violation, the other one's got a clean record. You owe it to the rest of your employees to hire the person who's got a clean record. I think that's what we're looking at. We're not a court of law. I'm not accusing them. I'm not saying that they're guilty of anything. But if we've got two equals, and there are a lot of firms that can perform this work, it's my preference we go with the one that definitively has no question.
Mayor,
Mr. Chairman?
Mayor, If I could, I just want to clarify, the motion was to rescind the existing contract, so in order to rescind, it'd be a yes affirmative vote, so just make sure everybody's clear about that.
Okay. Did you have any further comment from staff position?
No, sir.
Okay, good. We do have a motion and a second on the floor, Mr. Secretary.
Councilmember Moore?
Just to make sure this is to rescind, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Councilmember Reed?
Yes.
Councilmember Ordino?
Yes.
Councilmember Little?
No.
Councilmember Perez?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
No.
Motion passed 4-2 with Councilmember Carbone absent from the chambers.
Ernie? Let me adjourn this special meeting, August the 7th, 2017, at 6:21. We are waiting for the Planning and Zoning Commission to come into place and assume their position.
We're hot, right? Maybe you heard it.
Let me open a series of joint public hearings between the City Council, City of Pearland, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, City of Pearland. And we have 3 joint public hearings before us tonight, and I would like to ask staff to give us some guidance on the items that we will be considering and the procedure that we shall follow. If you do need to make presentations, it'll be a part of the process.
Right. Good evening, gentlemen. Tonight, we've got a CUP, a zone change, and UDC text amendment. One of the items was removed for insufficient notification. That was CUP 17, number 14. Each item will have a public hearing conducted as follows. There will be a call to order, followed by staff report, followed by the applicant's presentation. Then public has opportunity to either have 2 comments in support or opposition. Please come forward to the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record. Please be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame, and then complete a speaker's card and give it to our recording secretary here on the left side of the room. Then there will be council, commission, and staff discussion, followed by an adjournment for each item. After the joint public hearing, Planning and Zoning Commission will hold their regular meeting tonight after all of the public hearings happen. Speaking at the P&Z meeting is at the P&Z's discretion. There will be a first and second consideration for each of these items held on September 18th and 25th, respectively.
Would you restate the condition of item number 1? Joint public hearing number 1.
3 joint public hearings, a CUP. The first one is number 132708 Pearland Parkway. The second one is Zone 12 for 6630 Bailey Road. And then the third is the UDC amendments.
Number 4, 2000.
One of them was removed for insufficient notification.
We will drop number 3 out, so we just have the 2 tonight. Okay?
Great.
Great.
We have 3 out of 4.
We had 4. We went down to 3.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good. That information in the record, let's move to open a public hearing for CUP 17-00013. Ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the purpose of the hearing on this item.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request of Ave Desai, applicant on behalf of H-E-B Grocery Company LP, represented by Debbie Knox, owner, for approval of conditional use permit CUP to allow for a liquor package store in the general business GB zoning district on approximately 22.3385 acres of land. General location 2708 Pearland Parkway.
Okay, with that information in the record, let's move down to item 2, application information case summary. 2A, staff report.
Sir, and again, this is for a conditional use permit for a liquor package store at 2708 Pearland Parkway. A summary of the request: this is a liquor store within the general business zoning district. The property was developed as a shopping center in 2015. The proposed suite within the shopping center is 2,945 square feet. They're not proposing any modifications to the building, only the interior build-out. This is the aerial map right around the corner from City Hall. This is the zoning map showing general business for the property. This is the future land use map showing retail, offices, and services. This is the liquor package store buffer map showing what has been approved, what's pending, and what's been applied for. As you can see, within a mile, there have been 2 approved, 1 is pending, and then this would be the 4th one within a mile. And then within 2 miles, there is an extra 1 approved. This is the site plan showing where in the suite configuration the store would be. This is a view looking north. This is a view looking east. This is a view looking south. And this is a view looking west. Staff has not received any return notices or phone calls in support or in opposition of the proposed zone change, or the proposed conditional use permit. This is the code conformance table where we kind of break down the comp plan, thoroughfare plan, unified development code, plating, and utilities. Generally, everything is positive on this. It meets the future land use designation. There's enough enough right-of-way, so there shouldn't be any problem there. It matches or is consistent with the general business zoning classification. The property is already platted and it has sufficient utilities. This is a copy of the criteria for approval for a conditional use permit. I won't go through each one of these as we've gone through them. Staff recommends approval with conditions of the requested conditional use permit for the liquor store on the approximate 22.3385 acre site. It's again consistent with the retail offices and services. The site is located within a major commercial node, which is ideal for this type of use as it doesn't allow or kind of buffers itself from other commercial entities. And then the proposed use is consistent with the general business. And again, it's buffered from the surrounding uses as the nearest residential component within that area is basically behind the detention pond for the whole site. The proposed use, again, is within an established shopping center, which would mitigate any potential negative aspects to aesthetics or any activity that would accompany it. And then the proposed use isn't anticipated to generate extra pedestrian or vehicular traffic. So there's no additional things that would need to come into play to mitigate those factors. And then the proposed use meets the standards of the general business zoning district. This completes staff's report.
I complete your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Let's move to item 3B. Let the applicant make a presentation. Is the applicant here today? Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission for allowing me this opportunity to speak here in front of you. I would like to give a brief introduction and history of us. We are a family-owned liquor chain since 1983. Victor Patel, who's my uncle, he comes from a civil engineering background. After graduating from Texas A&M, he did engineering for 12 years. I'm Avik Desai. I'm a doctor of medicine and have worked in healthcare for 13 years. We had 8 liquor stores serving Houston area, including River Oaks, Medical Center, and Copperfield. At present, we have 5 liquor stores serving Houston, 3 in Houston and 2 in Sugarland. There are 3 in Kroger and 2 in H-E-B centers. Our newest location is about to open in Heights area on Shepherd. Pearland location will be our 7th in an H-E-B center. We plan to build a high-end signature store to serve Pearland market. Of course, Pearland is a new market to us, and we are very excited to come here. I am just about to sign a lease on a house here to come and stay with my family in the city of Pearland. All of our locations have a very strict policy not to sell any items to person under age 21, including soda and tobacco, even though we are allowed by the TABC. We have an exemplary compliance record with the TABC and take extra measures to ensure minors are never served. We do not carry single beers, discount cigarettes, phone cards, etc. to deter any of those kind of activities. Thank you very much.
Good.
Here, I'll give you a quick presentation. That's our proposed business name, which we already registered, Broadway Liquor, and the location is 2708 Pearland Parkway. We have a suite number 160 already leased from H-E-B, and it's on the H-E-B complex on Pearland Parkway and Broadway. Our mission is and always has been to provide a friendly and comfortable environment where customers can purchase quality items at a reasonable price. Our choices and products will include pretty much everything that is in a packaged liquor store. I just mentioned a few there, including whiskeys, bourbons, rye, vodkas, tequilas, beer, and a lot of additive items as mixers, juices, soda that goes with the packaged liquor. Our hours of operation are controlled by TABC, which will be Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., and we are closed on Sundays. The good part in the H-E-B complex I would like to mention here, since the H-E-B's hours always will be extended beyond ours, so it is kind of a safe place to do a business like this. These are a few mention of our short-term, long-term goals and strategies. We believe in quality in product and services, and eventually, according to the market need, we'll look at the expansion and extension of the services at the location. And we always strategize on hardworking and perseverance, and always give the best quality products. This is our legal structure. It's an LLC named Varahi LLC, and a single owner, myself, Avik Desai. My business advisor will be Victor Patel, my uncle I just mentioned earlier, and I'll be operating on day-to-day basis, including the managerial tasks. And as of now, we haven't, before opening up the business, we cannot be sure of the employees, but we'll add them as needed basis. And just a quick few snaps of our few locations that we already have in Greater Houston area. Again, I would like to thank everybody here and wish you good evening. Thank you.
Good. I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Does staff have any wrap-up comment on this point? Okay. Hearing done, let's then move to item 3 on our collective agendas, which would let persons who wish to speak for or against this particular request give you an opportunity to do so, but you probably need, if you have not filled out one of these forms, you need to fill one out because our secretary needs that to make sure that our records are contain this form. So at this time, is there anyone in the audience who'd like to enter into the record a comment, statement, or testimony regarding this proposed request for a CUP? Please. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor Reed.
Well, give us your name and address and your comments in about 3 minutes. Thank you.
I'll try. It'll probably be shorter than that, actually. My name's Laney Cade. I live at 1901 Meadow Creek Drive in Pearland, Texas. 77581 is my zip code. Thank you, Mayor Reed and Councilman. I want to thank you all for everything you do for the city and for the residents of Pearland. I guess I want to address my concern with, first of all, the number of CUPs that are being approved, liquor stores, gas stations. It seems like they're just popping up everywhere, and I feel like the purpose of a CUP is to allow the establishment of places that are suitable in certain locations, and I have to respectfully disagree with the staff member that said that the liquor store matches that area, because I don't feel like it does. I don't think a liquor store matches in that plaza. I don't know if any of y'all have ever gone there. Traffic is already a nightmare, really, really bad, and I don't think a liquor store is going to help that. I just can't imagine a liquor store next to the smoothie place and the frozen yogurt place and the mod, and it just doesn't match. I'm sorry, and I respectfully say that. I know council, I've heard many council members say that it's not their job to say what's going to be built, that it's a business owner's, but it is council's job. It is. It says it in our own Unified Development Code. It says it in the state government code. It is your job to protect the city and not to let this happen. I mean, we don't need a liquor store and a gas station on every corner. And I mean, I'm not going to stand here and read it all to you because it's going to take too much time, but it does say it in both places, and that it is council's job to approve these things and to limit height, I mean, there's a list of things. And I'm asking to please consider, be mindful of our green space, be mindful of the beauty of our city. We compare ourselves to Sugar Land and the Woodlands, and zoning is a part of that. And just please be mindful of all that. Thank you.
Good. I appreciate those comments. Thank you very much, ma'am. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to enter into the record a comment or statement? Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Hello, my name is Sydney Gray. I live at 2222 Westminster. I'm right behind the HEB that's right there. And I actually agree with her that a liquor store doesn't really match that area. It's a very family-friendly area. And I understand that liquor stores are available now in Pearland, but I agree with her that that area is really more family-friendly. Thank you.
Good. I appreciate those comments. Thank you. Did you fill out a form by chance?
I will.
Okay. You can come up and get one before we leave. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to enter into the record a comment or statement regarding this proposed request? Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to enter into the record a comment, statement, or testimony regarding this CUP request? For the third and final time, for the purpose of the record, before I move forward in the agenda, is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to enter into the record a comment, statement, or testimony regarding CUP 17-00013? And hearing none, let us move then down to item number 4 on our collective agendas, which will let City Council, the Planning Commission, and staff join in with their comments regarding this particular issue. Starting with our City Council, let me start with Councilmember Carbone.
No comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Moore.
No comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Reed.
I just have a brief comment about the procedural portion of this. And maybe the applicant wasn't familiar, but then the applicant just kind of said that they have other liquor stores, not necessarily in Pearland, but other places. And so you got to be kind of familiar with how things work, because I don't think our process is too different from Houston or other surrounding cities. Anyways, it looks like this was applied for, correct me if I'm wrong, in June. But the coming soon sign was up well before any CUP sign or any notice to the community, and so that isn't necessarily or shouldn't have any bearing on whether or not they receive a conditional use permit. But it is kind of like you're assuming that it's just going to happen, and so I don't think we can do a back and forth talking deal, but I just wanted to make mention of that. That's it.
Okay, good.
And the coming soon sign was in May that I saw it, so.
Okay, good. Councilmember Ardno.
No comment.
Okay. Councilmember Little.
No comment.
Councilmember Perez.
But no comment.
No comment. No comment?
He doesn't, I do. I do.
You faked me out there.
Yeah. Let me go over something with you on what I got out of the last newspaper here, driving while intoxicated at the police department. Police arrested Pearland man for DWI. Pearland man 57 arrested for DWI. Pearland policeman 27, age 27 arrested for DWI. A crash and DWI report in Pearland, and then another one arrested Pearland 33 for DWI, and then we had one stranger coming in out of Pasadena, and he got arrested too for DWI, and then we had another person 25 with the DWI, and another man with 23 DWI, and then we had another one sneak in out of Alvin 29, and after a collision was hit and run, he got hit for DWI. I think some of the comments we've had tonight is basically the way I feel. Since this came into effect, and I didn't sign it to come in for the liquor store, package stores in Pearland, but it seemed like, what have we got, 8, 9 now that we've got in here. I mean, we're going to have one for every person in Pearland before long. And again, I think the same thing on the gas stations here. I think Pearland's a lot better than that. I mean, to me, atmosphere on it. And I know this was in conjunction and sublease out of HEB, and I talked to Jim Sunday that runs HEB over there, and I told him, I said, I fought like crazy to get HEB here, but I said, I'm going to have to go against this and not vote for it. He said, Woody, he said, I expect you to. And he said, if I were up there, I would do it. He said, I was very forceful with HEB of doing that. He said, I sell beer and wine in my store. And he said, now they put my competitor, a few doors down from me. He said, I don't know why they're doing it, at least not our space for that on there. So from my way of thinking, we've got plenty here. We've got one just about on every road in Pearland now. And just because you can get a change on this to be able to put one in, I'm not going to never vote for one to go in. I'm sorry, but I think there's better use with our property here. I think, all these people I gave you for DWIs probably didn't buy liquor in Pearland. I don't know. But I think, the thing about it is, I think we have enough. We got them from one end to the other. We got two in conjunction with us over here in Friendswood, right beyond our separation of cities here. On every street, we've got one nearly coming in. Pearland Parkway. Actually, you got one on Cullen now. You got one on several of them through here, all out through the city. I mean, it's getting to be ridiculous. We go from none until now that we get more than it is. And to be honest with you, I hope all the package stores go out of business because they don't sell. So that's the long version of my no. So that's what I feel about it.
Mayor, I do have a comment now. I have no problem if someone doesn't want a business and wants to vote no. I will be honest, I do have a problem when we try to say a business is a reason someone breaks the law. And especially, I don't know the statistics. I would have to go look them up. My assumption is most DWIs come from locations where people can drink on site, not from a packaged liquor store that sells a sealed container and it's actually against the law to consume at that location. So I do personally take offense for those business owners when we bring out DWI statistics. I would say gringos and gringos, but restaurants that sell liquor on site cause more DWIs than a packaged liquor store when I'm going to pick up a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of bourbon to take home. So that does bother me when those statistics are attempted to use to scare people. The gas stations that sell at HEB that sells it, just because we sell liquor doesn't mean that it's going to cause people to drive drunk. They did it before in Pearland. It's happened my entire life when we just had beer joints. So I just don't like that personally.
Mm-hmm. Their responsibility stops when they walk out the door with the liquor store does. Not so much for somebody serving drinks, or whatever else that goes with it.
Mayor, I just add, look, it's difficulty. It wasn't a huge vote. It wasn't a landslide vote, I don't think, on whether we're going to allow for offside premise liquor sales, but the citizens voted that they wanted it. And I don't know how I retroactively go against what the citizens asked for, which was they want off-premise liquor in the city of Pearland. It came on referendum by their signature to be put onto a ballot, and then they voted in the affirmative for it. I personally don't want to live next to a liquor store, and whether that's fair or not to the business owner. I mean, I wouldn't want a council member to vote for one in one of the two gas stations that are in front of my neighborhood, and I certainly appreciate that. But in this situation, I think this is where, as staff said, this is where we intend to have them in shopping centers where people do shop. They're limited in their hours. You're not going to have somebody at midnight going out and who's already hooched up that's going to go out and get another bottle of liquor at the liquor store. Is closed at 9. I think the difficulty is how many of them have come in. We've had that conversation. I think Keith and I will say the same thing. It's just not our purpose in government for us to control the market. The citizens have said they want it. Not all of the citizens, obviously, but the citizens as a whole, or as a majority, said that they wanted it. And then we have to take a look at, are there particular locations in the CUP process where it is inappropriate? I think in this case, it's an appropriate location. There's always factors to whether a business should and shouldn't be in certain locations, but the fact that there might be a criminal who may do criminal things and patronize that business, I don't think is one of them. So, I mean, to be fair to the applicant, so they know where they stand at the end of this, I'm going to vote yes. I think you have a few other votes yes for this. So, just so you have some communication of where you stand. But clearly, it won't be unanimous.
I think we get an awful lot of liquor stores and filling stations recently. I wondered if any of these have done a market study, because the market is the referee on this, and if they get too many of any one particular type of a development, the market sort of determines which one's going to survive. And I'm not sure whether we've got the market support in town for too many more of each one of those. So, does the council have any further questions at this point? Mr. Chairman, how about the Planning Commission?
Star?
That's way up there.
Not at this time. I think if the people voted for it and it fits in the zoning, that probably, it's not our decision on whether they can make it go or not.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a few things to say about it. First off, when this was voted on back during the presidential election, we had a very heavy turnout, and we had like 37,000 people come out and voted. And it was unanimously voted on to have liquor in the city of Pearland. But it was voted on by the promise of some of the people that are sitting up there right now that it would be done under a CUP. All right. To me, that tells me that y'all are directly responsible for how many liquor stores that go into Pearland. Because you're sitting there when it's going to be, it's up to y'all's vote and up to our vote as far as how many liquor stores get approved for certain sites. All right, I understand the market such as that, but we were promised that there was going to be some type of conditions and stuff set before we just sit there and flood the market with liquor stores. And we've never, ever come to a conclusion about what those conditions are or what those specs are for allowing liquor stores. Right now, every liquor store, and I'm not getting into this east and west garbage at all, but I am going to say that all of them are east of Cullen. They're all within, yes, they are east of Cullen.
Costco.
And, well, okay, you got two, but I'm talking about there's
said
eight.
all.
There's eight
You just
that are
said
in
all.
there. And, you know, you've got an overabundance of them as far as I'm concerned. And even though I do agree that this one is going to be in a new HEB, it's probably one that I could support. But until we come up with some type of guidelines, I'm not voting for another liquor store.
It's kind of my opinion that if the citizens voted for it, this is an appropriate place to put it. At least it's in a grocery store area in a big development that's not too close to schools. I didn't vote for the last one because there was a school that was obviously not in session at the time, and I don't think they would have gotten good notice, and I think those parents would have showed up. But I think this one's in a proper location.
I don't have a whole lot to add. One of the things I struggle with the liquor stores, and I wasn't opposed to liquor stores in the city of Pearland, I did have a higher expectation of what was going to come to the city of Pearland. Being that we have a large market liquor store to the north of us on one of our major thoroughfares, upstream in going home traffic to all four of the ones we've looked at here. I'm disappointed in the liquor stores that have come to Pearland as far as what they're bringing to the city and for the overall look of liquor stores. What I'm seeing in density is compared to the uptown area, to the Galleria area, in density of liquor stores per volume of people. Uptown, I believe, is 66, 70,000 in just that area. And the liquor store density in that area is approaching what it is right around Pearland Parkway in number of stores. Of course, where I work, highly dense population, the liquor stores are over 2 miles apart in a very dense portion of Houston. So I look at why so many, why such a small space around Pearland Parkway and 518. I agree, the citizens voted for it. A small overall number of citizens, the same small number that votes council into the positions they're sitting in today. It's a majority vote. Y'all represent 120,000 people. And you can't just say the citizens wanted it, yes, we're going to approve every one of them. We are a zone city. The same majority of people that voted for the liquor stores voted for zoning and planning in the city, and that's on your shoulders as well. So what we're missing out of the equation is what is acceptable to the community, to the business, to the churches, to the community. What's an acceptable level? What's the density? We don't have that information in front of us. None of the liquor stores have come up here and said, hey, we've done a study on demographics, we've done a study on this. This is what we're seeing. Your community's demanding X number of liquor stores per square mile. Yeah, we're not seeing that. We haven't heard that argument. All we've heard is, we want to open a liquor store, we think it's great, your community's great, we've moved here, we're going to open a liquor store. Okay, I understand that aspect of it, but from council, from planning and zoning, as long as planning and zoning is in control of CUPs, which this may end tonight, but this is a good example of why that process is in place, I believe, so that this body of 7 and that body of 7 takes a majority of people out of those two groups to pass something just like this, so that there's an extra scrutiny put on the businesses for some reason that we're determined to require CUPs. We haven't discussed why a CUP is put on a liquor store. If council wants to remove that CUP requirement off of liquor stores, 4 people can say yes, and that goes away. And we allow liquor stores on every corner that it's allowed by right. We're not seeing that either. So there's got to be some kind of balance that this body, city council body, the city as a whole, puts on liquor stores. We have a gas station CUP requirement as well. We've actually said no to a gas station in this city. Hopefully 2, but my vote's leaning toward no, mainly because of density in this area. We've already seen 3 in this area. Another one is just going to add another liquor store. Do I need to be able to walk to get a bottle of booze from one to the other or check prices between them? No. Why the density in this area specifically? Nobody's really sold me on that. So my vote would lean toward no.
I thought it's kind of interesting that in this particular staff report that within a 1 mile radius, there are 2 approved liquor stores, package stores, 1 liquor store approved, and 2 mile radius of another liquor store. So you got quite a few this all in one radius of this particular area here. So it's I think the market will weed these out and and help determine what are useful and not. So does complete your report, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes.
Does staff have any wrap-up comments at this point?
No other comments.
No wrap-up comments?
Mayor, I have a comment. I think what we're talking about, what we banded around is, for each of us, we have a different opinion about what the appropriate location for a liquor store is. And let's be fair, we have a conditional use permit on it, same way we have conditional use permits on other things. We want a deeper look at it and have an opportunity to say, is this or is this not an appropriate place? Density, I've never seen in a zone anywhere for any use, this can't be within 200 feet of a similar use. I don't disagree with the argument. Yeah, it's a lot of them. If P&Z wants to propose putting together a workshop and coming up with better criteria to give the applicant some guidance as to when they want to be, when they're going to be allowed to be there and when they're not. Give the citizens some opportunity to understand where their protections are and where they're not. My personal opinion is, I don't want them in front of a subdivision. I don't want them in a neighborhood services type of use. I don't want them near a school, even beyond the I believe it's the 200-foot limit from the property line. You know, I personally have those restrictions, but that may not match the opinions of y'all as decision makers and the rest of the council's decision makers. So we're bantying around a lot of opinions without landing on criteria. And what is owed to the citizens and what is owed to the applicant is criteria, predictability. Let them know when they're going to be able to enter into an agreement. If I understand, this individual may have already entered a lease, which is, if you've done that, you're at fault for having done that. You shouldn't have done that without knowing whether you're going to get the use or not. But without some predictability as to whether he's going to be able to get that use, are we being fair to him as a business owner? If we just sit here and wait for him to apply and come up to the microphone and say, I want to have this use, and then we just throw out 14 different opinions, that's not fair to them. It's not fair to the people on the other side who are opposed to it. So I don't neglect or negate or trivialize any of your opinions. But what the opinions need to equate to is a compromise that we can all agree to that gets somehow created or codified in criteria so people have some predictability. The citizens know where their protections are, the applicants know where they're allowed to use, as opposed to this process where it's just muddy. So if we want to talk about a criteria that says we can't have 2 liquor stores within 2 miles of each other, we can debate that. If we want to have criteria that says we can't have a liquor store within 500 feet of a school, we can debate that and argue those on its merit for the entire city, as opposed to individually as each of these people come up. And that way we all have an opportunity to discuss it and get some finalization. Hopefully, if that's the way y'all want to go, I think kind of that's where we are. Maybe we can do that before the next applicant comes in, or before the next citizen gets confused on where the protections are.
If I could respond, when liquor stores were added and the CUP was changed in the UDC to be required, I think I did mention that we needed that to happen then, but I will take that action and we'll move forward with that on our future agenda.
I think it's a good move.
Okay. Further comment from council? Planning Commission? Hearing none, we do have item 5 on the agenda, here, and it says I can adjourn this standalone docket public hearing, which I did. Let me, in the like manner, open a standalone public hearing, zone change application for zone 17-00012. Ask the chairman of the Planning Commission to read into the record the purpose of this hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request of Fang Feng Sung and Huane He. Sorry if I mispronounced that, I'm sure I did. Applicants owners for approval of a change in zoning from suburban residential 15, SR 15, to a general commercial GC zoning district on approximately 3.5818 acres of land. The general location is 6630 Bailey Road, Pearland, Texas.
Okay, that information on the record. Let's move down to item 2 on our agenda. Application information, case summary. 3A, staff report.
Yes, sir. All right, again, this is a zone change from SR 15 to general commercial for property located at 6630 Bailey Road. The applicant is proposing the development of an office warehouse for the sale of goods online. The property is currently developed with both a residence at the rear of the property and a custom car shop closer to the Bailey Road frontage. The property was recently annexed in December of 2015. This is an aerial photo. You can see basically the red line crosses where the little car shop is, and then the residence is kind of right there in the middle. This is the zoning map showing SR 15 And this is the future land use map showing low-density residential. This is a view looking north. This is a view looking east. This is a view looking south. And this is a view looking west. Staff has received one return notice in opposition of the requested rezoning. And there were 2 phone calls, generally with questions about the proposed zone change. So the comprehensive plan has this area labeled as low-density residential. The thoroughfare plan, Bailey Road, is in the process of being widened. The Unified Development Code is kind of back and forth on this one because there are conforming and non-conforming uses on the property currently. So under SR 15, the car automotive place is a non-conforming use, but if it goes to general commercial, then that would become, well, it wouldn't become a conforming use because that would require a conditional use permit, but it would at least be more conforming than what it currently is. But it would also make, the potential change would make the residence a non-conforming use. So that's why it's in the yellow, it's a maybe. The property has not been platted, and the subject property has no access to city water or sanitary sewer facilities. Again, this is the criteria for a zone change, and staff does not recommend approval of the requested change in zoning on the approximate 3.581 acre site for the following reasons. The SR 15 to general commercial does not implement the adopted policies from the comprehensive plan for low-density residential. A rezoning of this parcel could be considered spot zoning, as it would enable certain land use rights to one property owner, which would not be available to adjacent property owners. By changing to the general commercial, the residence would become a non-conforming use, as I've just discussed. The proposed change to the general commercial would not be in accordance with any of the city's land plans or with the utility plans for support of the expansion of the commercial development. You have to have water or sewer, and that would be at the expense of the property owner. The proposed change in zoning to general commercial may substantially affect the public safety, health and morals, or general welfare, as it would significantly increase the allowed uses and thus the potential for nuisances to the surrounding low-density residential districts. And that was one of the things that was brought up in that notice that we received today. And this completes the staff's report.
Great. I appreciate your staff report. Thank you so much. Moving to 3B, applicant. It's time for you to make a presentation, and thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, she says her name. I know how to say her name.
It's coming after you, isn't it? Good.
Sorry. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a pretty good introduction there, wasn't it? Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you.
My name is Fang Wilson, and my husband and I own the property at 6630 Bailey Road, Parent 7.
Would you speak a little into the microphone a little better? Thank you.
Was this better?
Oh, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. Now it is currently zoned as SR 15 suburban residential 15. This is a low-density residential district, and we intend to rezone it to GC, general commercial. We searched along and found the following in this information. At the time of the annexation, it was brought into the city as suburban development, SD zoning district. This zoning district is a default district for newly annexed land until zoned for a particular user. So I found this information online. This is a zoning for 2016, when this all the black area is still SD, the suburban development area. Sorry, I have no idea that I can bring the data or electronic data. I don't, sorry. But at least you can see that in 2016, this is not SR15. That means that you don't have special zoning definition for this area. But subsequently, the city rezoned the area from SD to SR15, since the majority of the parcels in the area are residential. It would also discuss that the individual rezoning for specific parcels will be facilitated by the city based on the owner's request. So that's why we are here. We just try to submit our request to meet our own needs. I would also introduce the intending business that we try to have on this property. The first one is auto shop. It is named Comcorrect Customs, mainly to the car customs and repairs. It has been there for more than 7 years. So when the existing use on this property are concerned non-conforming so far, because now it is SR15, but by that time, we can do the auto there, so everything is legal. It does not only serve the passing cars on Bailey Road, also serves the communities around. But now the metal building is not compatible with the thoroughfare plan. No parking lot, no drive access, no building facade. So, and not inconsistent with the surroundings. Look very old, ugly, something you may show. You just see the pictures just now. And then we do think that many necessary improvements have to make there. And the second one, business, is the online business. We sell daily use items on Amazon. So we do need a big quantity of the inventories. That's why we need this spacious warehouse currently around 10,000 square feet. That's what size we lease outside right now. But as we do not have any conventional retail business, so there is no on-site visitings like the HEB or Kroger. The only traffic we will have are the UPS or USPS daily pickup in the business days, and however, they only come once a day. Just when they come here to deliver the mails, at the same time they pick up our items. So in that terms, we do not bring any extra traffic problems. Because no matter it is residential or juicy use, the auto, at least the USPS still deliver the items, you know. And no matter it is residential use or commercial use, USPS still be there once a day. According to our real conditions, we visited the city and met Ms. Samin and I think also Mr. Griggs several times to talk about our rezoning or how I can use this land for our commercial use. And it will confirm that Juicy would be the best choice for us. That is why we choose the Juicy, but not the GP or other zoning. Now we also have some responses to your concerns. The first one, by changing the zoning district classification to Juicy, the residential house currently located on the property would adversely become the non-conforming use. While we do not have any plan to keep the residential use, house use, we will change it to the office use. The second one is the rezoning of this parcel will be considered sport zoning. Firstly, we do not think it is a sport zoning because on Bailey Road within the city limits even, there are quite a few businesses already existing there. The first one is 7006 Bailey Road, which is 3 properties away from us. Also not in the intersection of any road. It was rezoned to GB July last year, so July 2016. Next to it, there's a Joseph's Nursery, which was approved the end of March, also last year. And there is also a daycare named A Place to Go on 5134 Bailey Road. It was approved for rezoning at the end of July, also last year. On 4310 Bailey Road, there are a business plaza, like about 7 business, daycare, language facilities, and restaurant. Next to that plaza, you will find the Pearland Gymnastic Academy. And also on 4840 Bailey Road, you will find storage that you can keep the road, RV cars there. So it seems if you check the full length of the Bailey Road, you will find more business. Although some of them, we agree that out of city limits, but when you drive there, we see the Bailey Road as a whole unit. At least our plan is not a small spot for the business use. And then the third concern you may have is there's no water and sanitary sewer line to support the expansion of the commercial development. So far, there's no public water or sewer there. We are using our private water, well water in the septic system. No evidence shows that a private water and or sewer will accept the public ones. And also on the volume of the water we use is actually much less than the residential use, because we only have 2 or 3 employees, and then they just.
Are you approaching completion pretty soon?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm sorry. And then we just use the water to wash hands, and then no on-site visitors, they will use waters and or even the toilet or something. So no cooking or no showering, even no business related to the water use. So at the same time, any change in water or expansion in use and the expansion would require conformance with the Unified Development Code. And also city have the chance to decide if any specific business will have impact on the community and is not allowed then. So even when every business they try to be there, they will ask for the city to give them a permit. If you think that the use of the business is not allowed there, or it will bring an impact to the communities, I think the city will say, okay, no. So you still have the chance to decide.
Yeah.
Also, some conformance are considered here, the conformance with the comprehensive plan. While city already approved above mentioned the rezoning request, and the auto shops along the frontage of the Bailey Road is conforming use. So in terms of city desirable image, it will have more impact than the residential house itself, which is back in the yard and almost non-noticeable. And the second one is
Are
conformance.
you about close to closure?
Yes, almost.
Okay.
The second one is conformance with the thoroughfare. And once this contract is rezoned, the frontage auto shop will be improved by a lot by adding the parking lot expansion, the size, beautify the building, which will be more conformance with the thoroughfare plan compared to keeping the current awful poor condition, because the higher development standard can effectively enhance the city's image as a desirable place to live, work, and shop. Regarding the online business, as I mentioned below, there will not bring any traffic because there's only 2 employees, and then they only drive there and leave at afternoon time. And the second one, there will not be a lot of deliveries, only once a day on daily times. And the most important thing we have is there's no on-site visiting at all. We are not a conventional retail store. And also the Bailey Road have widened to 4 lanes, so there will be no actual.
We usually allow about 3 to 5 minutes, but you've been going for close to 9.5 to 10 minutes, so.
I'm sorry, no one let me know that we have the time frame.
Well, you do now.
Okay, I'll try to finish.
Would you give the last three sentences that you want to report?
There.
Which would be your closing comment?
Just give one moment, I'm sorry. The single house, we agree that now is not consistent with the permitted use, but we do not have any plan to keep that yet residential use. But once this is concerned to the change it to GC zone, the frontage auto shop will be more consistent with the GC zoning. And as I mentioned just now, we will have only own office warehouse there, and that will need 10,000 square feet. And then we will have to expand the auto shop approximately by double or at least triple. And then we need to add necessary facilities to support the auto business. Additionally, the property also falls within the COD, and any new development would be required to be in compliance with the COD regulations. And so,
Okay, thank you so much for your report, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving to item C, a staff wrap-up.
No, sir.
No wrap-up on that. Okay, let's move to item 3 on our collective agendas, which will let anyone who would care to do so to enter into the record a comment, statement, or testimony regarding the proposed request. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to enter into the record a comment, statement, or testimony in either in support of or in opposition to this proposed request for zone change? Is there, the second and final time, is there anyone in the audience who would like to enter into the record a comment, statement, or testimony regarding this proposed request for zoning? Thank you for being here.
I'm Chad Tooman, 7918 Broadway, Pearland. I don't know these parties, and quite honestly didn't know about this JPH. I walked in this room, but if you guys go back and look at the picture of this, any improvement here would be great. And the reason you speak about it is because I can see this building from my front door. With it being on the major thoroughfare plan, the improvements that will have to be made, the landscaping and the masonry fencing and the building requirement would be far better than what's there. Anyway, you might want to look at that picture again. Thanks.
Okay, be sure that you fill out one of these before you leave. Yep. For the third and final time, for the purpose of record, before I move forward in the agenda, is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to enter into the record comments, with a comment, statement, or even testimony regarding this proposed zone change 17-00012? And hearing none, let's move to item number 4 on our collective agendas, which give the council, planning commission, and staff an opportunity to make their comments as they deem necessary. Moving to our city council comments, starting with Councilmember Owens.
I don't have a comment.
No comments. Councilmember Perez?
Thank you. Question for staff. What at-home businesses are allowed in a residential zone?
Most things that a home occupation would have, so you couldn't do a warehouse, but you could do like a...
If I could clarify a few things. Sure. I know that the UDC, one of the things the UDC requires, though, is it doesn't change the character of a residential zone property. And consequently, if you're having frequent deliveries, UPS trucks and things of that nature, then that's considered a significant enough change that it wouldn't be allowed.
So, okay. I just struggle with this because I do think that I would like to see improvement in the blighted area, but the areas, the future land use plan shows it to be residential. We already changed one piece of property to OP instead of allowing it or requiring it to be continue to be residential. I think if we take all of these properties if we want to take a look at it, at the future land use plan and say that, no, this is going to be a commercial district, then we need to do that for the whole area, but I don't see this as anything other than spot zoning if we take this one sliver of a project or a piece of land and make it GC. It doesn't conform with the future land use plan, so I think I'm going to vote against it.
And just for clarification, that OP that was done last July was at the time of the rezoning for all of the SR 15. And that was done so that way their
Daycare,
yes, could be a conforming use.
Is my comment, Mayor.
Little?
Is it my understanding that they're going to replace the current business building with a newer, better building?
No, they would have the car shop, the new business, and then the residence at all in the same lot.
Okay. I
At least
drove
that's
by
what's
there
been
on the way
proposed.
here, and that current business is somewhat of an eyesore. If they were planning on doing away with that building and putting another one in, I would be more inclined to think about it. Right now, I'm leaning toward no.
So,
Okay.
okay, I'm struggling with a couple of things right now. And I understand frequency of deliveries. My only question or problem is I may need to rezone my house. And my brother-in-law, my sister and brother-in-law definitely need to because their UPS guy recognizes them around town. So that, I understand why it's probably written that way, but frequency in today's online market, I mean, I can almost guarantee you I have an Amazon package on my door 2 to 3 days out of the week. And of course, Postal Service delivers to all of us 6 days a week now. So, you know, I don't know if delivery is an issue in today's world anymore. Maybe 20 or 30 years ago, having a delivery truck stop at your house was something uncommon, but even in my little old town, I mean, part of town, we have UPS, FedEx trucks drive down the street every day. So that, I don't know. Spot zoning, yeah, y'all all know my opinion on zoning. I would have voted against it when it was approved in Pearland. But when you look at this area, if any of us feel in the next 10 years this is going to develop based on zoning, I think we're kidding ourselves. Let's get the improvements that we can. And if we're saying the area is not right for, you know, business development, Joseph's Nursery's been there forever. And when you look at an aerial map, if you want to talk about impact, they're the biggest landowner in the area. They, I would have to assume, generate more traffic than most in the area. I've also got a Texans portable toilets that's right down the street. Right next door, I've got a Michael Sellers and Associates. Even in the subdivision, I've got a couple of business uses going. So if this is online sales and we're talking about delivery trucks coming in and out, I don't see the problem with it. I really struggle with anyone that does see a problem with it. Now, if we're talking just zoning and we don't want to see any commercial development on the Bailey corridor, that's a different argument we can have, and I will be the first to say I'm against that as well, because when we look at our tax base, when we look at growth, I am sorry, but the density of residential development has got us into the place we are in the discussions we're going to start having on Saturday about tax rates and budgets and what we need, and that people don't want to pay taxes. But if we just keep building residential, guess what? Residents are going to pay taxes because there is no other option. So I personally like to see commercial zoning and commercial development, especially when you look at a 4-lane divided thoroughfare that Bailey is becoming.
Okay, Councilman Reed?
No comment, Mayor.
Councilman Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. I also struggle with this because of the other businesses in the area, and I don't see the difference with creating a warehouse here when we already have a custom car shop there. So I struggle with this too, but I would be more in favor of this than not.
Councilman Carbone?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is a tough one. Yeah, I think I'm leaning more towards a yes. I'd like to see the improvements to the building or to that property. And along those lines, can staff clarify so that the existing building there is going to stay with a new structure? What is that going to trigger in terms of any improvements to the existing structure?
So mind you, I haven't done a full site plan analysis of everything, but expansions over 500 square feet would have landscaping, fencing, buffers, setbacks, parking lot, would have to come into compliance with the Unified Development Code. Those are just some of the things off the top of my head that I know would need to come into compliance.
So when you say setback, right now with that expansion, that building is right there on the street. Is that?
So it would have to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustments for a special exception because it is an existing structure.
I guess whether this passes or not, the applicant clearly needs to know that there's still a lot of work to be done if it does pass. And from my experience, not a lot of cheap work. So whether it passes or not, just I don't want there to be any confusion going forward. That's all my comments, Mayor.
Okay, good. That information in the record, we'll move to Planning Commission, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor? Oh, I'm sorry. That's your question. I think with the clarification that the present building will have to be brought up to the standards that are in the UDC as they are today, the zone changes, that's the only way they're going to be able to get a permit to make the building more attractive to the general public. So we need to take that into consideration too. As for spot zoning in that area, we've come into another difficult area where you've got businesses and residences all mixed up in areas where they have been like this for years. And it takes a long time to get them sorted out so that something can come into play that makes it usable. I can't see where 10 acres is going to be spot zoning, and when looking at the area, it's so confusing. It's sort of like Cullen was, still can be, Garden Road. It's that kind of an area, and it's been like that for a long time. And I think we need to take those kinds of things into consideration. They will have to improve the looks of that front building, no matter what happens.
I'm going to kind of apologize.
It won't be able to expand. They won't be able to use the building or use the property for what they want to use it for.
Okay, for some clarification from staff, if we approve something like this, are they going to have to do something about that eyesore building?
Thank you.
So the facade is an existing nonconformity. That's actually what I'm looking up, is to see what year, because if it was pre-1981, then the UDC exempts facades that are 1981 or below. I don't know when that building was erected, so I'm not going to say one way or the other, but I do know that that facade existed at annexation So it's allowed to continue based on its status.
I guess the only question or comment I had is would an additional building be an expansion of the current one and trigger the UDC? So could the current building stay there and another building be built on the property without anything having to be done to the current building?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. So the non-conforming use stays no matter what's done in addition to, and this is one of the deals where we just got to look at the zone change and see if we want it to be GC or not. And looking further down the road, we did spot zoning. We created the zoning. We basically gave one existing business the zone that was appropriate for the business they were doing. Here we have a lesser use. People don't like the look of the building, but call it what it is. It's a business. I don't know if it's a GC business or not. I haven't looked that deep into it. I'll ask the questions later. I'm on the fence. I could go either way. Is it going to be residential? Probably not. It's a big piece of property. So I'm not hearing anybody in the surrounding 250 feet saying no. So I would lean toward a yes on this. That's all, Mayor.
That completes your report?
Yes, sir.
Could I ask something about planning and zoning? If we approve this as GC, if we approve it as GC, there's nothing that has to be done at the building. They could bulldoze the whole thing and put in a use that has nothing to do with what they've applied for. We have no control over that. We're zoning the land. But a lot of people have comments about, it seems to be the appropriateness of our current zone and future land use for this. So maybe that invites us to take another look at what we've got in this area, both in our current zone and what our future land use is with this. We've got a lot of mixed use through there. We had the same thing when we annexed Garden. We came up with a special zone in there. Maybe that's what's we need to look at for this, is to create either maybe a commercial zone through that district or a mixed use zone through that district, similar to Garden O'Day mixed use, so that there is the ability to have these mixed developments in there as they're conforming, or we have a discussion of saying how we actually want this developed.
Any other comment from council? Staff have any wrap-up comments? Yes.
I just want to state and make note that
Hold it up.
I just want to make note, if any expansion occurs on the auto repair shop greater than 500 square feet, it's going to require that shop to come into conformance with the UDC. And if changing it to GC, then that auto repair shop will be a conditional use. So we'll have to go back through a conditional use permit. I just want to make that.
Okay, thank you.
Also, from the tax assessor, the building was built in 1980, so it may be exempt by the Unified Development Code.
Okay, I understand.
So even if they added onto it, it exempts it?
Negative. If they add on to it, then it has to come into conformance.
I want to make sure I'm clear.
However, if they do it as a separate building, then they're not touching it.
Then that building is exempt, but the new building would fall under the new UDC. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor, can I ask one more question?
Yes, obviously.
At the end of the packet, there's the proof of the taxes being paid, but it shows a certified owner as being a different owner than the applicant.
They just purchased the property in April, I believe.
In April?
Correct.
Okay. And when was all the annexation done?
The end of 2015, December 2015.
Okay. All right. So
They knew what the zone was.
yeah, that for what it's worth, this wasn't a business owner that had owned the business and had been there, and we annexed them, and they've had their home business, their family business there for 20 years. This was purchased full well knowing that. Itching to say something.
I was going to say one slight correction.
Yep.
Property owner versus owner. I believe the business owner rents from a
Okay.
property owner.
Yeah, the property owner that we're dealing with
Correct.
is, what, should have been
Slight difference.
fully aware of the zoning when they purchased the property. So I guess that to me is a little different than if, we had annexed this and they'd owned it in the family for 20 years and they're looking to expand or change use. So, thank you for clarification.
Any further comment? Mrs. Hay? I just want to say that I thought your presentation was fine. I'm sorry for the miscommunication on the amount of time that you're allocated, which is about, about 4 to 6, 8 minutes. And you were going about close to 15. But you missed that part, and I just want to apologize for that. And it was not meant to be derogatory of you, but we had to move on with the hearing. So thank you for the presentation you gave. I thought it was very good. Thank you. I'm sorry about the time frame issue that probably got past you. That information in the record. Let me move to item 5, which let me adjourn this public hearing for zone change 17-00012. And move in our agenda to a docket public hearing. Let me open this posed hearing. Ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the purpose of this hearing.
Yes, Mayor. This is amendments to the Unified Development Code UDC number T-26, zone 17-00014. This is a request of the City of Pearland for proposed amendments to Unified Development Code ordinance number 2000 T-26.
Okay. Move to application information case summary. State item 2. 3A is staff report.
Yes, sir. This will be our 26th proposed Unified Development Code amendment. This has essentially 3 land use matrix changes and then the proposed conditional use permit process change and a change to exemptions for tree farms. First, let's go through the land use matrix changes. The first change is up to lumber mill or yards. They're currently permitted within the general, commercial, light industrial, and heavy industrial zoning classifications. The amendment would make this a conditional use permit within those 3 districts, also making the CUP across the board. The second is for open-air flea markets. They are currently permitted by right in Old Town General Business and General Commercial, and permitted by a conditional use permit in the S1, 2, and 3, the spectrum 1, 2, and 3, General Business, and the M1 Light Industrial. This change would again make it a conditional use permit across the board. The third within our land use matrix changes is for transfer station, refuse drop-off points. They're currently permitted by right in the M1 and M2 zoning classification, and currently a conditional use permit within the general commercial. This change would make it a conditional use permit across the board as well. So we've had discussions about the revisions to the conditional use permit process. In your packet, there is the full detail with each of the red line section. I broke it down into its main bullet points here on the screen. Essentially, it would make the CUP treated as a legislative action within the specific zoning district. The conditional use permit would no longer be classified as a characteristic of the land. Site plans would be required with each submittal. Notice would still be by mail and posted on the site. Then following discussions, the city council would have final decision to approve with conditions or modifications, or deny the permit. And deviations from the site plan would be allowed as long as they would not conflict with the conditions of the conditional use permit. And then the city council may approve extensions without a hearing. Comes to you for a single vote. As far as the revisions to the tree farm and nursery, this is within section 4.2.3.4 under applicability for tree mitigation. And it would add the following subsection found in B exemptions, essentially saying that trees and other planted pursuant to city regulations on properties formerly operated as a tree farm or nursery specifically managed for the propagation of trees, granting an exemption to those classifications or those previously used uses of property. Staff recommends approval of the proposed amendments. This completes staff report.
Okay, I appreciate that input to us. Of course, moving to 3B, as the applicant just made the presentation. And just at this point, do you have any wrap-up comments before we continue?
No, sir, I think I've wrapped myself up already.
Okay, I think you did a pretty good job as both the staff report and the applicant presentation. Moving to item 3 on our collective agendas, this is an opportunity too for those who have followed this with a particular interest because of development or potential. Persons wishing to speak for or against the proposed request, which will be some changes to our guidelines that we'll be using. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to enter into the record a comment or statement regarding the proposed requested changes that were just posted, if you were following us on the screen up there, or have looked at this in advance? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to enter into the record a comment, statement, or testimony regarding the proposed request that would from staff regarding the CUP and other changes for the UDC? For the third and final time, for the purpose of the record, before I move forward in the agenda, is there anyone in the audience that would like to enter into the record a comment, statement, or testimony to speak for or against the proposed zone change T26 Zone 17-00014, which is amendments to the Unified Development Code? Hearing none, let's move down to item number 4 on our collective agendas, which will let the council, planning commission, and staff tune in on this. And starting with Councilmember Carbone, let him start our part for the council meet part.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I agree 100% with staff. Now the UDC amendments here, I guess, kind of bullet point number 2 is we've seen it in the past. It's the outcome of the ad hoc special committee to discuss that. As I reflected on the first meeting we had and kind of the thoughts and concerns that were thrown out, I think I can say, and Commissioner Duncan was there as well, I think most of those concerns were hashed out. And I think what we see tonight is a good, very good outcome. It saves staff time, saves the applicant time. I think moves the CUP process along while still preserving the good things we're doing with the CUP process. And I thank staff for putting everything together and meeting those Friday mornings. So that's all I have to say, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Boyd. Councilmember Reed.
I like everything as well outside of section 2.2.3.3. I expressed it before. I don't see any reason why we're cutting out the the process of planning and zoning actually making a decision and then us making a decision after that. And I had a question for legal. If planning and zoning continued to make the decision, I mean, isn't it possible for our next meeting for this to be put on the agenda after they make that voting decision so we can, so council can then vote on it, and that be the final vote?
You mean have them make a formal recommendation that night and then put it on the next council agenda?
Yes.
That was a possibility, and that was one of the things we discussed with the committee. But at the end of the day, I think the idea was to you know.
So the idea is to have us to wait until after they finish their meeting and then come back and vote, or?
No, actually, the way it would work is actually as, it'll be a separate CUP agenda docket that evening. Let's say there may be two CUPs. There will be discussion, and the way I think we discussed was that as we go into the discussion part, the council would actually allow the Planning and Zoning Commission to have their discussion first. Then the council would interact and offer in your comments. And then based upon that discussion, the council would make a single vote at that time. And it's one of the things that's been discussed up to now is the fact that, well, you know, having the Planning and Zoning Commission make a recommendation, if they voted against it, then the council would have to vote and have a supermajority to override them under our current system. Well, one of the things that's being changed is these will no longer be zoning cases anymore. They will not be zoning the property. Consequently, that supermajority would not be required, even if we weren't changing that. There was some language that indicated that in the CUP process, but what we're doing is we're changing it from a zoning process to simply assigning a CUP. So under that criteria, there would not even be a chance for a supermajority vote regardless, since we're not going to be treating it as a zone change any longer. So the thought was, let's get the feedback from the Planning and Zoning Commission that night, and then the council will have that fresh on your mind right then and there, and you could make a vote on it that evening. And it would only require one reading since it's not a zone change request.
So the first action, or the first note up there is taking away, it's changing it basically from zoning to an actual just.
It's a legislative, like, the zoning took place when it was zoned, its underlying zoning, GC or commercial, whatever it may be. That is the zoning of the property. The conditional use permit is simply saying, we are going to allow you to do the use on that property.
Well, and so in response to one of the citizens that spoke a little bit earlier, she stated that, you know, yes, it is our decision. And a few council members have made the comment that, no, it's not our decision to decide what goes where. Well, right here, what we are saying is, yes, it is our decision to decide exactly what's going to go where. I mean, if you don't come with a design or something like that, in my opinion, I mean, we're essentially saying, you know, you can put whatever there as long as it's a gas station, who cares how it looks, or as long as it's a liquor store, who cares how it looks. I mean, it's not a PD in the traditional sense, and, you know, it's not, you know, where every tree and every nook and cranny is going. But at the end of the day, I mean, when we change this to a legislative action, we are saying that, yes, we're going to decide where this is going to go, how it looks. I mean, she's essentially right to a certain extent from a legal perspective. I don't necessarily like the fact that we're curbing out a piece of the way. I'm not saying we have to keep it the way things were done. You know, if there's a way we can shorten it, you know, great. If it can go to the next meeting and be one vote, that's great. That gets them there. But I haven't seen the CUP process since I've been on council negatively affect a business to the point where they've changed their mind and they've gone to another city. In fact, I mean, it seems like it's working to the extent that we wanted it to work when we first voted on certain things to happen. For instance, the gas stations. I mean, you know, we've experienced it hadn't worked great with the gas stations, but, you know, the gas stations, the liquor stores, you know, we're seeing that there are a lot of liquor store applications just in general. But, you know, I feel like the supermajority option, and that seemed to be the topic revolving around 2.2.3.3, what does that have to do with someone's, the expediency of someone's application getting through? Absolutely nothing. Just because we can be overridden by what P&Z decides. I mean, that has nothing to do with, whether or not the application goes forward quickly. And in my mind, maybe letting them vote and then us voting in one meeting or the next meeting and it be done with. But anyways, those are my comments. Yeah, that's it.
I want to say something based upon that. I also kind of have an issue where now we don't have to have a supermajority on something. When I was all in favor of doing this committee in the beginning because I wanted to fix things on the front side. I had a lot of people complain to me about how difficult the process was. They didn't understand the process, et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted to make that process as simple as possible so somebody that doesn't do development could walk in and be able to understand it and go through the process much simpler than they could. So, I mean, I kind of have an issue with us not having to have a supermajority on certain things, that it doesn't take much for it to pass. Just to my 2 cents on that.
And if I can chime in, if you don't mind, Mayor, I mean, again, all this discussed in the ad hoc committee and with the representation there from the P&Z, quite frankly, we talked through what it would look like, and it would be a vote by the P&Z commissioners, and then it would come to us, and it would be, I think as one of the commissioners said, extremely awkward whenever they vote to approve or deny, and then we turn around and have to pull a supermajority and essentially say, no, you're wrong. And the other thing is, if you look at the votes, now that we have 7 council members, it takes, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it takes 6 out of the 7 for a supermajority. And that means that 2 council members can hold out and stop a development. I don't know. I'm not in favor of that. And as I comically told Commissioner Duncan, it only takes 4 of the 7 to remove a commissioner. And I think that you can get into a real sticky situation.
That clarifies something for me then with the 6 on the majority, the supermajority vote, so.
I was just going to mention that what we're going through tonight is a result of the fact that Pearland is growing at such a rapid rate, and the type of development that is coming into Pearland was what we're experiencing in just fairly recently, and was not there originally when we drew up our guidelines and rules. And as we have grown as a city and as we have matured as a organization of making the decision on our how do we handle development coming in, we have to go through, make sure that we do things like this, make sure we go back and maybe change what we had, the concept we originally started with, and change it to something that would fit what we are doing as a rapidly growing city with a great deal of development coming in that we've never experienced before. So this is something that we'll probably continue to experience this as we grow. We're 130,000 now, so it's as we grow even more, we'll start getting things. We didn't have that many filling stations and liquor stores coming in before, but we had to sort of adjust our rules to accommodate those, because most of the type of development that we've had is something it was what we've had for the last 15, 20 years. So I think this is very healthy for us, and but I like this procedure. What it does is it recognizes that CUP is really a legislative type action in a sense. So I think it's something that we'll be doing a lot of this as we proceed, as we grow more in the city. Councilman Ordino, let you tune in on this.
My first is going to be a request. I do request when we see this on council that these be broken up so we can vote yes, or, individually on these changes to the UDC. The CUP process, it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect because, in my eyes, because we have to all agree on it up here. And if you ever get 7 people to totally agree on something, I would consider that a miracle, especially if I'm one of them, probably. But it's an improvement, and I will support that update. I don't think it's going to be a shock to anybody in here saying that a lumber mill or yard needs a CUP and an M1 or an M2. I just don't get. I can understand it in a GC somewhat, and I do understand, yes, Lowe's and Home Depot wouldn't need them, but Ace would. And I don't hear people complaining about Ace Hardware that's been there forever and abuts residential and all kinds of other development. Same thing, open air markets. We list flea markets, and because of one that I've already messed up and named a retail name tonight, I won't do that again, but I think we can all guess which one I'm talking about. No, I don't want to see that again in Pearland. I would love to find a way to improve that. But I hear from people all the time, we want farmers markets, we want craft shows. All those are open air markets, and I think are perfectly acceptable in the Old Town site, and in some ways what we envisioned in the Old Town site of a walkable area where you can go and do outdoor commerce, and that is an open air market. So again, to say, in all these it needs a CUP, I'm sorry, all I see this is government growing its power. These businesses now are not approved by right anywhere. You have to come to the power it be and have them grace your business. For me, that's not America. That's not private property rights. That is saying the government has control over your property. And we keep growing that control in ways that I just struggle with. And those two I struggle with. Transfer station, I get it. No, you don't want a transfer station anywhere. I would guess that nobody wants a transfer station, and that is what makes life difficult for some of these, because nobody wants it, but there is one issue: we all need it. You have to have it somewhere. But I can live with that one. But the other two, I just look at and I'm going, really? I just don't get it. I'm sorry. I'm small, limited government, and I like my private property rights.
I just wanted to mention to the people in the audience that I spent a number of years in the space business where we talk to each other in acronyms. In case you don't know what a CUP is, a conditional use permit is what that CUP is. So that's something you've been stumbling on a little bit. So, Councilmember.
I'd just like to commend the committee on doing a good job on these revisions, and I'm all for anything that streamlines the process and speeds up these meetings. Other than that, no comment.
Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to go through each of these items, but not necessarily in order. First, with the CUP process, I'm incredibly proud of what the committee put together. I think it was a good conglomerate of the opinions in the room. We had a good cross-section of all manner of people who were affected by this: a CUP applicant, a layperson who came into the meeting without even knowing what a CUP was, a P&Z member, we had council representation, a few people who were on the development end. What we felt in the recommendation was that this was a good compromise to allow the control that the citizens want of us without putting people through an arduous process To Councilmember Reed's comment about not knowing of any development that, that's left because of the CUP, I know of a lot. There's been a lot of development. They don't always come to this meeting, and we don't always get to hear from them. There was one that was supposed to be presented tonight that almost got lost because of the CUP process, and some other things associated with it. You know, development is not developers aren't necessarily the most patient people. And the unfortunate part is you tell them, look, if everything goes right, you still got to wait 90 days before you can even know your use. They will walk, because they'll go to Pasadena where there is no zoning or CUP, or they can go right across the street to the city of Houston on the other side of the Beltway. They have no use restrictions whatsoever, minimal planning requirements. So we do lose people to the process. They want to invest in Pearland, and we want them to invest them here, and we want the protections that the citizens ask of us. But we want to simplify the process, not lose the control, but simplify the process. Commissioner Duncan, he very eloquently discussed what it would look like, I think, in the ad hoc committee meetings, about the difficulty it would be to be on that side of the table. All of the commissioners whom I respect greatly, though we don't always agree, and sometimes we vehemently disagree. I greatly respect their opinions, and I want to hear their input. That's why we developed the process it was. Let's get their opinion. Let's get their thoughts. Let's know what it is that they're thinking, so they can input into our decision. But let's not put them through an embarrassing process where they say no and then we say yes, or vice versa. I like the process the way we have it, I think, or the way it was proposed. Is it perfect? No. There's probably need to tweak it in the future. We may not know where all the flaws are, but as we develop, we can always improve. So I think the process, as the committee recommended, is a good, fair process. It streamlines a lot of things. I think it will create a beacon to the other developments or the other municipalities around us that have a CUP about what exactly a CUP should be. Putting in site restrictions that have nothing to do with the use, and requiring a developer to say no, we'll ignore our UDC and we'll ignore our EDCM, our engineering design criteria manual, and we're going to tell you have to have an improved development, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with use. I just don't think that's fair, and I don't think that was the intent, as I've ever seen it, of what the CUP was. We have a PD for a reason. We have the UDC for a reason. We have the EDCM for a reason. We have the variance process for a reason. Let's let the CUP to concentrate on the use. We can make recommendations for anything, any site restrictions or other characteristics of the development that are intended to specifically mitigate issues associated with the use, such as noise, such as light, things that aren't already protected in the UDC. So again, I think the process as recommended with the work of the committee, I think it's a good process, and it's putting us in the right direction. With respect to the additional CUPs, I think Councilmember Ordino said it more eloquently than I could. I don't necessarily see the benefit of a CUP in the M1 and M2 zones for the lumberyard. I can definitely see it in the GC, just because of where we have GC. And, I don't think we would really want to encourage a lumberyard against Broadway, but against the south side of 35 in the industrial area, or in an area that we're hoping and develop as industrial. I think those uses are fine. I don't think we need a CUP, because I think that's what those uses are for. I would prefer it to be a conditional use for the GC on the lumberyard, but allowed by right. And he and I also shared the same thought. But, is it clear in our criteria where the differentiation is between a home improvement store and a lumberyard? I don't know if we have any kind of definitions of that, but I think there may be some need in the use definition for some clarification. That way there's no confusion. So if, say, O'Day's want to expand, or Lowe's wants to remodel, or something of that nature, that we have some understanding of where the lumber yard ends and where the home improvement store begins. If it's there and I just don't know where it is, that's fine. I don't see it. The transfer station, I agree, CUP for that. On the trees, I appreciate staff looking into this. I know it's a complication with respect to what our tree ordinance was intended to do and what it sometimes accidentally does. These tree farms that existed, I've had a development that I worked on was an old tree farm, and they spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of additional dollars on trees to mitigate the ones that were there that were planted for transplant. It risks costing the development. It was a lot for them to survive, and it wasn't really what we were trying to, at least in my opinion, what we were trying to do when we adopted the tree ordinance. We want the natural trees that grow here in the forested areas to be mitigated, but if somebody buys 20 acres and transplants a bunch of oak trees and then abandons it for 5 years or so, and those trees end up becoming protected by size, already by species, we've rendered that site undevelopable under the old criteria, because most people just couldn't survive the mitigation requirements. I needed one point of clarification from staff, because if I read note 3 of the write-up, revisions of the UDC regarding the exemptions of the tree farm and nursery that are located on a lot of record that is 10 acres or less on which a single-family home or tree exists, other than those required by TRANA, or on properties require or formerly operated as a tree farm. We're not saying that the 10 acres applies to the tree farm. I think we've truncated that a little bit, and it may be interpreted as if the 10 acres or less does apply to the tree farm. So if you have a tree farm and it's 20 acres, it's not exempt. And maybe that's just my reading, if nobody else agrees that that's not clear. But I would like it to be the clarification that the 10 acres or less is for the residential only. There's no site limitation or no site acreage limitation associated with the exemption for the tree farm.
Councilor Bowens?
It's kind of like deja vu. For 12 years, the longest meetings we had was on planning and zoning. But we're not going to sell liquor in the open air market, are we?
Might. I don't know. State probably doesn't allow that.
Now, I really don't have a problem with it. I think, anytime you bring the PNC together and then an ad hoc committee come in and anything to expedite the processes and make it more presentable to people that are going to do business to understand what you're getting into and how to do it. So I think it's good.
Are you going to speak some more?
No problem with it at all.
Okay. Let me let the planning commission tune in on this, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to add, David Selsky couldn't be here. He sent staff a letter concerning the changes to the CUP process. I wanted to hand those to council and to P&Z, just for the record. As I read it, David seems to be opposed to the changes to the CUP process. However, I just wanted to share his comments, and I'll go to Star. Mary, if you have comments to make.
My only comment regards why we need a CUP in an M1 or M2 zone. I thought that was what they were for, was to let them do things like that. Other than that, we will agree with everything else.
Well, I'm obviously in favor of the CUP process changes. I was on the committee. I think we did the best we could do with what we have. I think we gave them a much more fair, or not necessarily fair, but a much more streamlined process where they can get their answer in one night. We can cut it down to one really long meeting instead of 4. So I'm obviously in favor of that.
I guess I can count to 4, to quote Greg Hill. I have my reservations changing the process to mainly because of the voting and that requirement. Understand it only takes 4 of y'all to remove any of us, but truthfully, it only takes 1, because if you ask me to resign, I probably would. That being said, when I got involved in P&Z a long time ago now, these 7 seats were hard to fill. There weren't a whole lot of people volunteering to serve on P&Z. And then all of a sudden, we had some people come in, and we haven't had a problem filling the 7 seats since. I would hope that it's because we've developed the processes better, we've educated our commissioners a little better over the processes, understand that council can change these anytime they want to. So I guess the hesitation I have is because now that I've done this CUP process for about 3 years, knowing what applicants show up with and what we end up the end of the night with, they're going to have to do more homework coming to a CUP meeting with council, I believe, and the process is going to take just as long. Again, y'all will be able to postpone. That's probably going to happen quite often from our experience. We're going to see that. As far as P&Z being part of that process, it only takes 4 of y'all to remove a P&Z council to a P&Z commissioner. It takes 4 of y'all to vote for a CUP. So 4 people are going to get all the, how can I put this? It's going to take 4 people to approve any of them, no matter what. If they're debated or not in the community, we're basically another voice in the room. So that takes that little bit of power away from P&Z, puts it back onto council. I don't know the history of why this was done prior, why this was set up this way. If I understand it correctly, the process used to be totally on P&Z, then it was moved to this joint kind of shared responsibility, probably to take some of the workload off of council, because going through these could take time. And that's probably going to have to be worked out. People are going to have to, the applicants are going to have to tune their papers up before they come to P&Z if they want a quick response. I would hope this wasn't rooted in trying to make this as fast of a process as possible without that hesitation to review. That's where I see the positive side from a resident perspective, from totally on the resident perspective of seeing what's coming and how many of them are coming. It puts 7 people into that CUP process before it gets to council. Liquor stores is a good example. We've got some highly contested CUP applications here. Some people don't want them, some people want them, some people don't care. Build whatever, and my point is, if council wants to build whatever in whatever zone, council needs to vote on that and do away with the regulation in the CUP process altogether. Take the CUPs out of the list if that's what council wants. Why sit in here and go through the process if you're going to say yes? If we don't have a list of qualifications for a liquor store, whatever comes out of P&Z's meeting or our subcommittee or whatever you want to call it, that's all on council now. We're just another voice in the room. truthfully. We're just another voice in the room. We're speaking for the residents that don't have a voice in that meeting or didn't show up to have that voice. We're 7 voices in the room, no matter what. But we don't have a vote. So if council wants to listen to the comments we make and take that into consideration, great. I would hope that's the way it works. Do you have to listen to us? No, not at all. And if that's the case and council doesn't want that voice, then why is P&Z in the room? You know, plating is a rubber stamp issue. For the most part, plating is rubber stamp. If we meet the criteria, we check off the list, yes, it passes. Most all plats are passed. So what does that leave P&Z's duty as? We're a witness in the room for CUPs. We get to speak for hopefully the residents and hopefully have some input to that process now. And PDs being zone changes are back, are still in are still one of our primary reasons for existence. So I guess I look back to the history and go, why did it change? Why did we get to a mixed process? And does it need to change? I don't get a vote, y'all do. So if it's going to change, then let's see what happens. But I think that process did yield some pause for, and I haven't seen anything come through P&Z yet that council couldn't overturn because they wanted to, or that was even in that position. I don't think we've had any items that way. If there's a fear that P&Z was going to somehow vote no on everything, and council would have to have 6 votes for, excuse me, for every item, then the problem there is with the people you've chosen to be on P&Z, and y'all are the ones that chose them. So if we're not qualified for the position, or we're not doing the right job for council, yes, we need to be removed. You need to make that 4 vote and get those people off of P&Z so we can work as a team. And we're just going to shortcut that, and it's going to be on 4 people's shoulders no matter what. So the lobbying for the 4 people from whoever is going to go to 4 council members, and it's not going to be spread out across P&Z and the entire board. There's not that check and balance there anymore with this new process. That's all I've got. My vote will be no, but I'll support the process once it passes council.
Okay. So complete the planning commission's.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, okay. Does the staff have any wrap-up comments to this point that you need to share with us?
No, sir.
Okay. Does council have any further comment at this point? I want to make, before I gavel this adjourned, we do have this form that is required for those individuals who do speak and whose names are winding up on our list of people who have spoken and are recorded. If you have not finished and completed this form, would you please get it to, would you hold up, stand up so she knows where you are? Make sure that she gets a copy of that, because she'll check that copy against the comments made on the recorded comments and picking up the names, and we need have one of each one of those. So if you haven't finished it, well, please do that before you leave. And moving in my agenda here to item number 5, it says adjournment, and I shall so do that at 8:34. That completes the work of the joint public hearing between the Planning Commission and.
Let the record show David Selsky and Troy Pradia are not present. Takes care of call to order, item 1. Item 2, we do not have a consent agenda tonight. Moving on to new business. Item A, consideration possible action variance from minimum lot width to allow platting of a flag lot. This is a request of Jennifer Lamb of Keller Williams Realty, applicant on behalf of Alfredo and Maritza Ruiz, owner, for approval of a variance permitted in section 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Development Code Ordinance number 2000T to allow approval of the creation of flag lot within the RE Residential Family Estate Zoning District on approximately 4.162 acres of land. This is the general location of 5631 Bailey Road. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve the variance of minimum lot width to allow platting of a flag lot.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Have staff report.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. So tonight, item A under new business, consideration and possible action of variance from the minimum lot width to allow platting of a flag lot. This lot is located at 5631 Bailey Road. It's 1 mile west of Pearland Junior High School and just east of the intersection of Bailey Road and Harkey. The variance request is to plat a flag lot in the RE zoning district. The applicant simply wants to build a single-family home, and per the UDC, the minimum flag lot frontage width is 50 feet, and the maximum depth to width ratio is 3:1. Staff recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the requested variance of 20 feet for the proposed lot per section 2.6.1.1 B1 of the Unified Development Code, ordinance number 2000T. The proposed lot will meet building setback requirements of the zoning district, and with the exception of the minimum flag lot frontage width and depth to width ratio, the proposed lot will conform to the RE zoning district. Platting status. The applicant proposes to submit an application for a minor plat to allow the platting of a lot in conformance to the RE single-family estate zoning district standards. As you see by table 1, the required dimensions are half an acre, and the applicant, they have 4.162 acres. The lot width is 120 feet minimum, and the proposed flag lot is 20 feet at the flagpole, 240 feet width at the front property line, and 235 feet at the rear property line. And the lot depth minimum requirements are 90 feet deep, and what the flag lot has is it ranges anywhere from 530 to 550 feet, and the entire depth is 1,250 feet. Surrounding zoning and land uses. To the north, it's zone SR 12, suburban residential 12, and that land use is a large single-family residential use. To the south, it's zone SR 15, suburban residential 15, and also a large single-family residential use. To the east, it's zone RE single-family residential district, and it's also a large lot that is used for single-family. And to the west, it is also zoned RE single-family residential district, and right now that property is undeveloped. Conclusion. The proposed lot will conform with all the minimum dimensions of the RE single-family estate zoning district except for the flag lot minimum width frontage and the width to depth ratio. The frontage width is currently 20 feet due to the unique way that the parent tract was subdivided. So a little history on this is it was one tract, and then the property to the east was subdivided out, and they received a variance for a flag lot back in 2012. And there's also a property to the west, but the problem is neither property owner to the east or the west want to sell any additional frontage to help the applicant. And so the 20 feet frontage is 5 feet less than the 50% width allowance of the 25 feet per the UDC, and it results in a variance request of more than 50% from the minimum lot width allowed by the UDC. So essentially a flag lot was created by the property being carved out to the east. And the variance to the minimum lot depth is not expected to negatively impact the surrounding single-family land uses, being that those lots in that area are very large to begin with. This is an aerial view of the site. As you can see, just to the east is the flag lot, and to the west, southwest corner here, that is the neighbor to the west that does not want to sell any portion of their land to the applicant. This is a zoning map, Exhibit 2, and this is a future land use plan map, Exhibit 3. This is the survey of the property. And as you can see, the flag is 20 feet in width, and then it widens up, and it's 4.162 acres, so it's a very deep lot. And this is a ground street view of the property. It's currently undeveloped. And that is the end of my staff report.
Thank you. So I believe with the Bailey Road construction, there's a double driveway there now. One servicing this 20 feet and the other for the other property.
That's correct.
So it's already set up for the only access to the front property will be through that curb cut.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Commissioners have any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. None opposed? Okay, we'll move on to item B. It's in consideration possible action on conditional use permit application number CUP 17-00013. This is for the liquor package store 2708 Pearland Parkway. Previously heard all about this in the joint public hearing. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve CUP 17-00013.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Staff have anything to add to the information previously presented?
No, sir.
Commissioners want to give comment?
I think everybody knows how I feel about it. Until we come up with some type of criteria on this, of course, it looks like that's fixing to be taken out of our scope of what we do here. So, I still think that we ought to come up with some type of criteria for, where we want and how many we want as far as in the city of Pearland. I'm very much aware that we've got one in Costco's, but the majority of the ones that have been put in have all been on the east side. And I looked at it, the last one that we voted on, we voted down. I've got something like 8 liquor stores within 15 minutes of my house. Like I said, I'm not against somebody taking a drink. That's not my problem. I just don't want it to get to where everywhere you look, we talk about the beautification of this city, about going down the major thoroughfare of our city. Well, we go down the major thoroughfare, which is Broadway, and you can see almost every one of these liquor stores. So I'm not in favor of it. And like I said, until we come up with some type of criteria, I'm not voting for another one.
Mary, you have a comment?
No, I'm still trying to decide what is really going on. I'm not sure what I want to do yet.
My only comment is the same as before. Citizens voted to have them. If we're going to have them, let's put them in places like right next to HEB, big developments like that. Keep them nice, safe, clean. I think the Exhibit 6 that's in the package is a little bit misleading. The one that's pending, that one is still just pending. It's definitely not approved. One of the ones that's approved on Berry Rose, I saw a new for sale sign on the front of that building. So I'm not sure that that one, even though it got approved, that that one's ever even going to open. So that's kind of my opinion. We're going to put them in. Let's put them in places where I think they'll fit. So, and these are the types of places that they fit.
I think I've said enough previously. Due to the density, in my mind, 4 liquor stores within a mile range is too many in my mind. I was opposed to one of the liquor stores at Berry Rose for the same reason. Both of those passed. I am a bit concerned when a business comes in, leases property or buys property before they know our process, and they put up signs, and we all saw the signs go up prior to this. That's unfortunate. Maybe that's a city issue as well, that we don't advertise the process enough. I don't know. But I was opposed to it before then because the other liquor stores had already come to us. This is kind of along the lines of apartments in Pearland. Because of all the apartments that exploded on the west side, it's hard for a guy to get an apartment complex anywhere in the city of Pearland now. We're at that point with liquor stores, I believe, but everybody that was here earlier heard the conversation from council. This is ultimately going to be the decision of 4 council members if they want this or not in the city. If we voted against this tonight and it went to council, it could probably come back to council after that amendment changes and goes into effect, and the vote may possibly be there. So tonight, my vote will be no on this one. Any other comment? All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Split vote 2-2. So that's recorded as
negative.
Negative. It needs a positive recommendation. But it needs a majority to get a positive recommendation to the board. I apologize.
Okay. So moving on to item C. Consideration of possible action, zone change application number 17-00012. This is also from our joint public hearing. This is for the approval of a zone change from SR 15 to General Commercial GC zoning district, 6630 Bailey Road. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve zone change app 17-00012.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. Staff have anything to add? I know we're going to have some questions. Commissioners, you have any questions on this one?
Okay, I just want to make sure, when I asked the question a while ago, we can't require them to do anything about that existing building unless they add on to that building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it will be the same eyesore that it is right now.
It could be.
Could be. So what we're voting on here is a zone change, straight up.
Yep.
The condition of the property doesn't have anything to do with this process.
Well, it may not, but it still has a bearing on it.
I mean, the next person that comes on, the owner of the property right now, if we change this to GC, they could go out and sell it as GC property. Person can come in, bulldoze it, and build anything GC in there. So that's why we always kind of say, look at the zone. It's a zone change. It's a zone change, and you got to put your blinders on to everything that's being said to you, because we've learned through our history that whatever is said, or sometimes even what's on paper, isn't what happens once we vote a zone change into effect.
And I agree with that, Daniel, but the thing is, this is my thinking on it. If we allow that building and the condition of that building stuff, and even though it is strictly a zone change, we set the stage what's acceptable out there around that area. I mean, nobody in the right, eventually that's all probably going to end up being commercial out there. eventually, you know, Bailey Road is going to be a major thoroughfare. Those people have big lots out there. There's some of those people out there that their homes set back far enough that, you know, they may end up having businesses, and we've already done that with a couple of businesses out there where we did, you know, more or less spot zoning. You know, it was, what was it, a daycare that we did, and then I think there was a building or something down there on the corner. But you know, I'm not in favor of this particular one just because of the eyesore, and I can't help myself. I know that it should be strictly off of it being a zone change, but I can't help but look and see what's out there, and if you know, where if they were going to come in there and build something that was more sightly, you know, looking at the property and looking where it's going to be at, I might be more inclined to do it. But, you know, right now I'm not.
If I can make a couple of clarifications. One, I think there's a difference between a non-conforming use or a non-conforming structure on site, and if they wanted to continue that use, or rather expand that use, being the front building, that would require compliance and have things come up to date, but not necessarily, it may not have the facade requirement that comes up to date, but other improvements would be triggered. But that's only if it's a non-conforming use. Currently, because it's zoned SR 15, it would be a non-conforming use. If you go forward with the zone change request, it is no longer non-conforming uses because the mechanic shop would be allowed there with a CUP. So if they wanted to expand it then, it's possible that a condition would be to change it, but that depends on the tenor of council at the time, whether that council is looking at just the use or if they also want conditions attached to that use. And well, you've heard the discussion tonight on the proposed CUP changes. We don't know what they would do on that type of thing. So I think the best focus is to say, pretend that there's nothing there, does a GC and all the possible GC uses make sense at that particular area. The other thing that I'd like to say is that I've heard some people suggest that there's been some spot zoning, or maybe the city has done some spot zoning in the past. And I would say that when the city has rezoned property, it was already had that use when it was annexed into the city, and that could make it a little bit different from this case. But moreover than that, it would have been at locations that are at intersections where retail nodes are in accordance with our future land use plan, which would not make it spot zoning because it's in conformance with the plans. And then here, the real issue isn't the auto shop that's at front, it's the proposed new use of the warehouse, I think, if I'm understanding it correct. And that would be different from what you see out there now. It's the warehouse type thing.
I guess my point was, and I probably misspoke, which I'm good at, we overlaid all of Bailey Road with zoning. And we went through a process where everyone on that road was notified. They had the opportunity to come here and argue for or against their zone that was being overlaid on their property. Some of those chose to do it that were there. I believe the daycare is one of them. That's now a conforming use. But surrounding that is not that same zone. It looks or appears to be a spot that we zoned, but how we got there was through that whole process of annexation and the overlay of the zoning. So I probably misspoke there.
And the property owner of this property also was notified, and that property owner did not protest or suggest that they needed to have office professionals similar to the other place that's down the road from here.
And I guess
they had that opportunity.
And I guess
chose not
that's
to.
where I have an issue with this one. And I look at it from my perspective. If I own the property and I got notification of that, and I had a business already operating on my piece of property, and I got notice that it was about to be zoned SR 15, I would go, this might not be a good thing for me. I could lose that business. Once that business goes under, then it goes to SR 15. I have to sell it as residential, and it's 500 feet long and 200 feet wide. it's not residential property. So now I look at it going, well, they had their opportunity, why didn't they do it? Got a new owner, but the new owner was renting the business. I'm torn here. It's a big piece of property, so I look at it and go, does general commercial work? Well, then I look at all the people that have houses next door to that and go, would you want a sawmill or whatever? GC's got some pretty heavy uses in it to go in on that piece of property, and the answer, I would think, would be no. However, those people did not come and speak tonight, and they were within 250 feet, and we didn't hear from many of them.
Heard from one of them.
We did hear from one person who sent in things for the record protesting it, if I understand. They didn't come here and speak tonight, but they did send their comments in, and that was part of the
I'm
staff
sorry,
presentation.
we normally get those.
Yes, yes.
So I did,
One person did come and speak for it,
well, yes.
so that balances, I mean, it's sort of like,
I kind of think it's pretty clear that it would be a spot zoning issue. We're not close to the intersection node. We're a couple properties over. Everybody surrounding them's residential. In the future, everybody surrounding them's supposed to be residential. I think it's a pretty clear spot zoning thing.
how close is the next business to that? 'Cause I can't tell by looking at the map. 2 lots over.
Martin's gonna bring up the zoning map for you.
I'm looking at the map, but it just doesn't. I'm trying to, I can see what I see when I drive out there, and it's like, doesn't match. It doesn't match as residential as well. Really houses.
This is a big, nice house.
Okay, because I thought there was all.
If I'm using the city's mapping tool correctly, the closest business is 900,
Okay.
approximately 900 feet to the west.
And that would be the nursery.
And that would be the nursery, and
The one,
some people would suggest that a nursery is a pretty non-intrusive land use in comparison to the proposed GC zone and to the residential areas out there. The trees themselves typically enhance the area.
because it's not exactly where I thought it was.
And there is a home on the property?
There's a home back.
On the back of it.
If you look at the screen, it's
Mhm.
the one circle,
Is it occupied?
but I don't know.
It was when they rezoned it.
They're still here. Yeah.
The house right there where the nursery is a house and a business. And the intersection there.
Two street properties away, there's 7,006 Berry Road, there's a multiple, a mobile taxi something company there, that's a GB, approved last year, July 2016.
Zoning layer.
Kind of,
There it is.
and
So I remember how we got here. I mean, we talked specifically about SR 15, the GB, the one on the corner where they couldn't get hold of the property owner for the SR 15 in the node, that's in the residential node.
Mm-hmm.
And we all thought that needed to be GB, but we couldn't. So Everything else is laid out that had homes on it. One had a business with a home.
Which is the
And-
7,006.
Yeah.
So I got, and they were all previous uses.
Right.
That one come back, that one was part of the process, 7,006 was.
It was, right.
That was part of the zoning, the whole zoning overlay for the annexation. I mean, unfortunately, if we carve out GC in the middle of that, it's classic definition of spot zoning, in my mind. I mean, I have a lot next to my home as well. I would love to put a giant metal building on it, but I can't do it. It's not zoned for it. That too. So I'm sorry, but I'm a no on this one. Any other comments? Daryl, any comments? Done. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion denied, 0-4. Moving on to item D, consideration possible action amendments to Unified Development Code UDC number T26, zone 17-00014. I guess I need to hear a motion, but knowing that this has multiple parts, we might, whoever makes the motion might want to think up of something. Or we're gonna have to go through this process later to change it. Probably a good idea anyways.
Where is,
Well, it's good to be in this chair, then I just can't make the motion myself.
You know what, let's get creative, a little bit so we can start talking about. I'll move to approve EDC, change T-16 zone 17-00014.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll have to figure out how to do this in a little bit. Again, from our joint public hearing, multiple items on here. Item 1, I'll read it from here, it'll be easier. Item 1 is to allow lumber mill yard permitted only by CUP in the GC M1, M2 districts and no longer permitted by right in GC M1 and M2 districts. This amendment will include uses similar to lumber milling and storage yards and will not include stores similar to Lowe's or Home Depot. Could I ask how we got to the point of needing this revision? What was the driving factor for this revision?
So the driving factor was we saw that when you have a use that's so large that it poses a potential hazard to surrounding properties, that maybe there should be extra buffers or requirements placed on that use to protect the general health, safety, and welfare of the community. That's why this was chosen as something that needed potential extra scrutiny.
So where does the lumber mill yard currently stand in GC? Is it allowed? We're adding a CUP in the GC.
It's currently permitted by right in the GC, M1, and M2.
Okay, so I agree with it in GC, but M1 and M2, I don't see a reason. Those are pretty heavy uses in M1 and M2 anyway.
Is there an issue with
residential properties flooding up in the M1, M2 type zones, or what's the, or are we just trying to do it for every?
There are some M1 properties that are smaller and not as suited for, if you have something very large surrounding you and you're an out parcel to that M1, and then another, say, like a paint and body shop exists. There's potential conflict between the hazard versus the hazard that they have on the other site.
I'm just asking because we don't, I don't know.
I couldn't speak to the specific motivation for this particular intent, but I can speak from a city's perspective, or, I'm sorry, a city experience that may be recent enough that y'all may have recalled it, and that's going to be a lumber yard over in the Riley Road area that kind of went up in smoke. And it was a fire that lasted for several days, and as a result of that, the road had to be closed for several days, and the businesses on those roads suffered at the consequences of the lumber yard that was held there, even though, you know, it was being operated in conformance with the zoning at the time, I believe. It created a problem, and it negatively affected those businesses. So before you allow something similar like that to happen again, that could affect the businesses, even the other industrial uses on that road, we want to make sure that, you know, we have adequate protections, we can close down a fire, it's not going to negatively impact anybody else in the future. That's just a recent experience that I can think of. I wasn't in the room when they said, let's make this change.
I totally support staff because y'all deal with this every day and come up with these reasons things need to be changed. When council makes a comment, they may go, why are we even looking at this? So that's the kind of stuff they need to hear. They need to know why, because you're getting feedback or the place burnt and it caused this problem, and now we're going to try to make sure it doesn't happen again. We want a way to pause and look at those items. So that's a good thing. I mean, I support it. I was just wanting a little history of why.
And if we look at our major M1 and M2 zones, which are, 35, there are some smaller out parcels that, you could potentially have that conflict there. So that's why.
Do you find that the issues that we may want a condition added for, are they because there's a lack in the codes, that the development code for that property, the building code, or that's causing these concerns? I mean, this is the solution for, say, whatever the issue is. But is it really deeper than that? Like you say, was there not a fire? Was fire not looked at in a fire case scenario looked at for that property, and it caused the road to be shut down, or the road wasn't wide enough for that business, and had to shut it down? So I agree. I just wonder if we're not solving, we're putting a Band-Aid on it afterwards instead of keeping it from happening with a stronger code that needs to be looked at.
So after we have that experience, it causes us to re-examine those types of things. And, when you annex property into a city that already has that type of use and then you zone it in accordance with that use, you need a way to stop it from expanding, I think is what it comes down to. And that's what, I don't know the exact history of this one. I don't know if it had expanded after it became annexed or not. I believe that it did. We've experienced that type of thing. But it would have been expanding in conformance with the zoning at the time as well. So that's where it creates that problem. So new uses in places probably have different protections that require for the development as it comes in. But the existing ones, once the property is zoned there, even if we annex it, or after we annex it, once it's zoned, the expansion might not trigger the same things that a new use would, that would provide some of those additional protections. So I guess it becomes a fail-safe mechanism, might be a way to look at it.
Any other comments on that one? No. So item 2, to allow open-air markets, flea markets, and similar uses to only be permitted by a conditional use permit in the S1, S2, S3, OT-GB, GB, GC, and M1 districts, and no longer permitted by right in the OT, GB, or GC districts. I certainly don't have any issue with that one at all, myself. Any comments, sir? No. Item 3, to allow transfer stations, refuse pickup, and similar uses to only be permitted by conditional use permit in GC M1, M2 districts, and no longer permitted by right in the M1, M2 districts. Again, it's obviously coming up from something that is either going to be an issue or you'll see it on the horizon. So I don't have any heartburn over that at all. And if I'll skip down to item 2, revision to the UDC regarding the exemptions of tree farms and nurseries that are located on a lot of record that is 10 acres or less, and on which a single-family home exists, and trees other than those required to be planted pursuant to city regulations on properties formerly operated as tree farm or nursery specially managed for the propagation of trees. Is there a second part to that, or is that it?
No, it's basically making it where it's easier to redevelop property that used to be tree farms. Because right now, I mean, tree mitigation is extremely expensive.
So I guess I don't have issue with that because, you know, if you buy a tree farm, you want to make it a subdivision, you're having to pay mitigation fees on all the trees that were planted on there to be sold. You know, or cut down for wood. You know, for goodness sake, that doesn't make sense. I don't have any issue with that as long as who determines the property, the trees on the property, what their use was? Is that historically, or how's that?
It's going to be historically, but I do want to clarify, it's not necessarily the trees themselves that were commercially sold, although those are also available. Those are also there. It's also trees that were planted to help nourish those trees that are going to be sold. So sometimes around the perimeter, you might have had shade trees that were put up. But if those shade trees weren't required as part of the UDC, if they weren't street trees, if they weren't in the front that every other business needs to do, then those trees would be exempt. But if it's in the front, and if it's a dual purpose tree, it was a tree that was planted to provide shade up in the front, but it was also a street tree, just as any other business would have had those street trees you'll have to mitigate. So just because it's a tree farm doesn't mean all trees on the property are exempt. Generally speaking, the ones that are what I would say are going to be more located towards the front yard, you're still going to have to account for. But
So the history of the property, the history of the businesses on there, if it was a tree farm?
Yes. And I can think of maybe 2 or 3 in the city. I think I've heard reference to 2 or 3 in the city that we know exist. If somebody else has one, then, you know, we're going to ask them to do it. But what we didn't want to happen is for people to start claiming, oh no, I had a nursery on every lot, and try to get out of the tree mitigation.
It used to be a farm.
Or it used to be a farm, yeah. You can't have either of those. No, it has to be a tree farm or nursery specifically meant for the propagation and sale of trees. So it would be on them to provide us those records if they want us to waive that mitigation.
I certainly don't have any issue with that one either. That leaves us with item 1, the revisions to the UDC conditional use and approval process. We had a lot of comments from everyone on that. Knowing how I'm going to vote on item 1, is there a suggestion of how we can handle voting for these one by one, or can we go through them and vote on them that way, or does it have to be?
I think you can get an indication from your fellow commissioners of how they're voting. I don't know what their intention is for that particular issue, but you can always move to amend it to exclude that one. And if you get a second and then everybody carries on that one, then I think that that would resolve it. That would be probably the cleanest way to resolve that. A motion to amend the motion to approve to exclude that item and then make a positive recommendation for everything else. It would get seconded, y'all would vote on that, and then you would vote on the amended motion.
I'll give it a shot.
Want me to do it?
You can go.
I would like to amend my original motion to exclude item 1, the revisions to the UDC.
To approve all others?
And, well, just to
Okay.
Yeah.
all I did was amend it
Is that
to
good?
remove that one item.
That would, yeah.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend on the floor and a second. All those in favor of amending the original motion, signify by raising your right hand. Okay, so we now have an amended motion for items, changes to the land use matrix, items 1, 2, and 3. And item number 2, revision to the UDC regarding exemption of the tree farms and nurseries. The vote will be to approve those. All those in favor?
There could be discussion about,
Do we have any more discussion on those items? None? Okay, we have no further discussion, and we have those 4 items on the table for vote. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. That motion passes 4-0. And we'll move on to item 1, revisions to UDC conditional use permit approval process.
Make another motion to,
We need another motion or not
I'm sorry, I was confused as to what the intent was. At this point,
to discuss that item?
so you wanted to do that one just separately to get, so the discussion on that would have happened at the motion to amend, but you can ask it to be reconsidered at this time. That would keep us procedurally. The motion, if somebody did not want to exclude number 1 and wanted to vote for that with all the other ones, the discussion on that should have happened.
No, the item we removed is the one we want to discuss.
Right, and that discussion would have happened then. I apologize. I thought the P and Z's intent was to exclude that, and it was going to be a 0-4 in regards to 1 based on what you're saying. And then the other ones were going.
it wasn't gonna be a 0-4 on that one.
Darn it, I tricked you.
He's right. We need to reopen that.
Okay.
So the chair wishes to
Move to reconsider the.
move to reconsider the motion. Do I need a second?
Yes, sir.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to reconsider. So just so we do this properly, we'll take a vote later for approval of items 1, 2, 3, and 2.
Right. So the motion to reconsider should put it back on the table.
Okay.
The motion to reconsider, so the motion you just made was,
We want to vote for item
We
1
wanna,
separately.
we wanna vote for that one separate. We
A-
wanna split it up.
and it's not on the agenda separate, so we
we
can't
can't
do
do
that.
So we have to vote on it all at once.
But, well, if you make your amended motion, which is what has happened, you vote for 3, and then the last one just is not considered at all.
Okay, we can't do that.
Okay?
There's got to be a way to do it.
Can't split the items and vote each one individually. I know
It's T26, it's just one change.
Because it has specific items.
Items on it.
Motion to split the item, and if they agree to do that, they can take each set individually, do it that way.
I don't know how that recommendation's gonna go back to city council as we do that, because it's one zone
They
change,
asked
but
for
we
it to
can,
come
we could
back
attempt to do it that way.
They asked for it to come back separately.
And I think that we had something similar to this before, and we did not separate it because it was one zone change. I'm sorry, because it was one text amendment, and each vote would be considered T26, T27, T28, and T29 if you did it that way. And it created some logistical issues for staff, or city council when they were trying to do it that way. I was trying to avoid that particular situation.
Can we record our comments on our votes? that we approved all of them, but, and we just added a comment to our vote and record that, so they know why we voted?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can we discuss item?
So do I now have to make another amendment to the original motion to
Okay, so
approve all of 17-00014?
Can we start over?
The reset button?
Yes, so I'm trying to think of the procedural way to reset, and it starts with a motion to reconsider. That gets it back on the table.
Okay.
We've got a motion and a second for that, so now you would have to vote for that, and that would allow you to get that back on the table and then to reconsider. So the motion that would be on the table is a motion to approve what I would say is the land use matrix and number 2. And then you can make another motion to add one back in it. You can debate what you want in one, and then if you have a consensus, that's what you would approve.
So we need to vote now to even reconsider.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to reconsider. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Okay. So we have 4-0 there. So the item's back on the table.
Right, and its most recent version is to
Strikes
have the
number
land use matrix and the tree farms. And if you want to add the conditional use permit back in it, you would move to re-include that one.
I'll make, Chair makes a motion to re-include item 1, revisions to UDC back in
I'll
to
second.
consideration. Have a motion and a second. All in favor of that? Signify by raising your right hand.
No, to re-include.
To re-include.
Okay.
Sorry. This is getting- We're really tearing up that Robert's Rule book.
Yes, sir.
Really take it apart.
All those in favor of,
Have a second?
we need it, we have
I think we had Daniel and Thomas both on that one, so.
all those in favor of adding item 1, revisions to UDC back into the original motion, signify by raising your right hand. 4-0, we're back where we started.
Right, now you're back as fresh. So now what you would want to do is just talk about what you do and don't like.
Try not to look at the camera.
Sure. What you do and you don't like about number 1 for the conditional use permit process. And then if there's a consensus in the discussion, somebody would move to amend the CUP process based on that discussion that you have.
I'm good with voting on it, since they're all lumped together. I'm gonna be a no vote on this, and I'll give my reason for the no vote. But we can't tear them apart
If we can't tear them apart, when you vote on them all at once.
and record our comments with, commentary with the vote for each person.
Yes, sir.
Because mine's gonna be a no vote, but I'm in favor of all items except item 1, which is the UDC amendments. That's the reason I would vote no, because we can't.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I think what Lawrence was trying to say that you have the option to add or delete portions of number 1 if you so choose. So if there's portions of number 1 that you would like to change or delete.
I don't think the consensus of commission's gonna want that, though. I don't have anything. If I suggest anything, it would be it's not gonna go forward. I know better.
You can always make a motion to amend, state what you want, and if it fails for a second, then you know that you don't have your consensus.
Should we discuss?
It's on the table, so you could discuss it.
We need to know what, yeah.
Let's just start on one end.
That's not fair because I'm not the one that wanted to. My basic objection to that was one of the things that we wanted to change and make simpler I would like to see them take out the fact that it has to have an engineered site plan. That's one of the things that takes a lot of money, and they have no idea whether they're going to get anything done or not. And if you're going to make it simpler, let's make it simpler.
Yeah, I don't think
It just
simpler.
says a site plan. It doesn't say an engineered
It's not-
site.
It doesn't say-
yeah,
okay.
And it never did.
Okay, all right, but, well, it did.
No, it never
It-
said engineered
no,
site plan. What they
okay.
were bringing us, though, was what was up to them on what,
Okay.
there was a lot of
All right, I just want that.
confusion on what a site plan was. I
Right.
think that what we changed at least gives some examples so that they can do the, the lower end or the guys who aren't used to this, that are just trying to add on, they can do the hand sketch site plan, and you don't need
Okay.
engineered drawings.
If that is correct, then I accept it. That was one of the things that just seemed like it was required that wasn't necessary.
Yeah, I actually, in the committee, pushed to keep the site plan on there. I know that Trent was pretty adamant that he didn't want site plans associated with it at all. I at least want to know what we're talking about.
Well, that, yeah.
And that's kind of, and we
I
had a
agree
lot
with
of
that.
discussions, especially with the guys who had recently gone through the process. And as long as examples were provided, and it definitely did not say engineered site plan, and it
Okay.
allowed staff some flexibility that what the site plan, that exact site plan, showing every tree, every little thing, if,
Okay.
there was a little bit of an issue where if they needed to move a tree for some unforeseen issue, they had an issue with that. Or
Okay.
it became a problem. So we definitely lightened up what a
All
site
right.
plan was.
Just so that is definitely what is understood, because that was one of the things that became very costly, and then they found out they couldn't do it at all.
Right. There was some discussion previously about wanting to make the front end of it more simple and just
Mhm.
leave the back end. I think it should be noted that the back end was taking 90 days. Once
Right.
it hit here, it was taking 90 days to get done. And that's a long time for
Right.
these guys to do it. We talked about several different options. We talked about, it only taking one meeting of council. We talked about it, and I think the consensus is council doesn't watch these videos. They just don't have time. They go home and they read the minutes, and the minutes don't always talk about everything we talked about. Sometimes they're left in the dark on what we're talking about. So I think the idea was to get it all out there in one meeting, I pushed for us going first so that they don't talk too much, and that we at least get a say. So when they go through our portion, we're not just saying no comment, no comment, no comment, because everything's been said. I think the supermajority thing, 6 out of 7 is a high bar to reach on some of these things. I think that the number of council members made that math really difficult. If it was 5 out of 7, to me, it'd be a different story. 6 out of 7 is very difficult, and I think that, that's just my opinion on the 6, and it's just
Is the
very difficult.
supermajority in the charter? Where is that set? Where is it in the UDC?
It's in the charter. It's in the
The
charter, too.
supermajority is not in the CUP section. The supermajority requirement is in the section regarding zone changes. And it's specifically if there are 2 triggers. One is your rezoning property and a number of property owners next to that person within that 20% have objected to it. And then the other one would be is if the Planning and Zoning Commission made a negative recommendation. But again, that's to a zone change. And even in the current CUP process, it says you will follow the zone change notification process, but it's not a zone change. So I think that there may be some confusion as to when a supermajority of that type of issue was required. But for text amendments and for CUPs, I don't believe it takes a supermajority to overrule a P&Z recommendation because it's not a zone change. So the supermajority requirement is in the zoning section. It's also in Chapter 212 regarding zoning of the local government code, but it's not in the CUP process. It's just because we follow the zone change procedures that I think that people have assumed that it always requires a supermajority on a CUP recommendation.
If that is the case, could we put in to the change in the rules that it would take 5 votes instead of 6?
Yes, ma'am. You can make a recommendation that in order to, P&Z makes a recommendation. Now, you would have to make additional changes because as it stands now, planning and zoning comment, with the way this is written, is not voting. They are only making
right.
comments on the issue.
Okay.
So you would have to require that one change would be to add that Planning and Zoning Commission makes a vote at the end of the discussion, and then it would take 5 council members, or however many you want, to override that recommendation.
And the issue there was, we're all in the same room.
Right.
You got
Okay.
7 on that side, 7 on this side.
Yeah.
We make a vote. We're not all gonna say no to something sitting in front of council when we just sat there, talked about it face to face, and we've heard that 4 or 5 council members, yeah, I don't have a problem with this. I don't even know why we're looking at it. And we would go,
So that's one of the reasons why I want us to go first, is so we're not immediately influenced by some of those discussion items.
and here's the issue I've got. What was the motivating factor cutting down the time after this meeting to less than 90 days? That's the, and because we followed the zoning procedure, that required
And it's,
downstream of here.
it's not 90 days after this, it's 90 days after they submit an application.
Right, yes.
So,
I misspoke.
this portion here is included in that 90-day period, and from what the development community will tell you from the feasibility study, that's too long. They have to extend options and contracts during that 90-day period.
So what was the target timeframe that the developers wanted?
Well,
Is it boiled down to, that's what this is about. It's what the developers want, and they come to city council and said, this has got to change.
Well, I don't think it was just the developers. I think if you've got a property owner who is trying to sell or reuse their property or use it differently, they don't want to spend 90 days doing it. They would like to get it taken care of so they had some resolution as to what's going on.
and I think that's really what, I think part of the motivating factor was, if it's a no, let's tell them early.
Yeah.
So we're not wasting time and money, their time and their money. Like, for example, the car wash and Arby's, I guess is what it is now. The 2 properties jammed into 1 property. That was a long process for them, and even though we gave them a no, they got a yes. I heard.
I don't recall, I believe so.
So even though, I mean, so if council's gonna be the deciding factor, and they are, that's what they decide now. Why do we need to come and talk about a property 4 different times?
But here's the interesting part about that. What we discussed in our meeting, what you discussed with the developer, when that was talked about in front of council, I was here for that one. That whole traffic study thing was totally misrepresented in that meeting, because what we discussed, what you discussed primarily with the developer, was an internal traffic movement on that property that they brought to the table, and it was wrong.
Right.
However, when we got to city council, I believe it got kind of melded into the traffic study for the area, and that's not what we were talking about. After, those are done afterwards.
Like, yeah, like I said, they don't watch these videos.
So our communication, all the time that we spent on that in here for about at least an hour on that one, was wasted.
And it wasn't just that hour that night. That property came to us 4 different times with this, and the site plan changed minimally every time. So,
If the concern is that what you're saying isn't being heard and it's being represented, this proposed process would prevent that from happening, because it's going to be said
All there.
right there in front of city council and with the applicant in the room, and nobody will be able to say, this is what happened, and misrepresent it, because everybody would be available then.
And I hope that our history of doing this, when it was put in P and Z's hands, when it was split, now they're gonna get, we have more CUPs today than we had 15 years ago, a lot more. I mean, we've filled the UDC full of CUP requirements. So all of these are gonna come before council. There's gonna be many CUP meetings now that all council members are gonna have to come to.
Well,
They have to be heard by city council at some point regardless. They have to be here for JPHs regardless.
To
So
make
it's-
this faster,
It's not shortening the number of meetings. However, I believe that they were provided, and Mr. Duncan, you were there at the meetings more than I was. I think I only had the benefit of being at one, maybe two. And they also provided a spreadsheet that shows exactly how many CUPs y'all have heard in the last, I think it was in the last 5 years.
and we talked, I mean, one of the discussions was, you know, the current JPHs are going to get longer. They have to get longer, because we're gonna.
no, they're gonna be.
Because
no doubt.
we're gonna have to discuss more. I think staff is gonna have to be more involved in some of those. I mean, you know, and a little bit more candid. And that was talked about in the meeting. I mean,
And that's where I kind of made the comment before. How comfortable is staff sitting in front of their bosses, per se, being as candid as we are and have been over the past years with back and forth communications? That's gonna council is gonna have to allow staff and to lay things out on the table and have that back and forth, and not talk down to staff as well as planning and zoning commissioners either. You know, everybody brings different items to the table. Y'all are the guys that handle this stuff day in and day out. Council members and P and Z commissioners don't do that. So, you know, we listen to you and go, well, what's the history? What went on here? What's happened? That has to be a very open conversation. Hopefully that'll happen. Okay, we'll try it. But
and
I don't know that's gonna shorten it, because I think what's gonna happen is we're gonna see things get postponed.
Right.
Because we don't have time enough to talk about this tonight. We're gonna postpone this, get with staff and figure it out and come back.
I think that some of the things where we beat a property to death sometimes, trying to hammer out the details, I think some of that's gonna get postponed. Because I don't think council's gonna wanna sit through some of those issues. But I think like some of the ones we saw tonight, I think we'll go faster.
Or the meeting goes like this. Talk about something, it's an issue. Council goes, that's not an issue, approved. Welcome to Pearland.
That's kinda what they did on the car wash property.
So
We pencil whipped that thing so much, and then it got approved regardless of what our vote
What
was.
bothers me about the process going that fast is these are real businesses that are forever builds, for the most part. We're adding permanent structures to Pearland based on a process we're trying to get down to less than 30 days.
I suppose one of the proposed changes is, as it stands now, the CUP says that it's a characteristic of the land. However, the proposed change makes it clear that it is not. And if that property becomes problematic because it's a permit, the permit could be revoked. It's no longer a characteristic of the land, and
So once that gas station's put in, that gas station's there forever.
it's going to be very difficult, especially gas stations and dry cleaners, because of brownfield redevelopment, to change those ones, but other things might be easier to repurpose or
A
redevelop.
CUP for a liquor store is not gonna be an issue, but a CUP for a gas station, you're building a physical, or a CUP for a lumber mill on a piece of property may be something that's
Yes,
a
sir.
bit more permanent. You know, I can count to 4. We know what council's gonna do. We'll just have to see where it goes. Not having a vote, if it doesn't matter, I mean, if that was a misunderstanding from everybody, that it takes a supermajority to override P and Z on that, and I misunderstood that as well. Because I think we've went through votes before and a supermajority was asked for to override P and Z's decision.
And I'd have to go back and check,
Had
but
conditions on it.
Darren and I were both of us looked at that today to verify, because we knew that that was one of the sticking issues. And, it's very clear that it is for zone changes. It does not have that supermajority language in the CUP language.
But we were
Treating it as a,
zone change.
we said that we would follow the notification process of zone changes, and we may have treated it that way.
And if that's the case, then the vote is that's a moot point.
Mhm.
Because it's 4 votes no matter what.
Yes, sir.
Now, on a zone change, it's different.
Yes, sir.
So,
The only difference is the city council is held accountable for their vote.
well,
We're
they
really
always
not.
are. But
Yeah, but I mean, with the CUP seems to get, people, we get a little bit more people up here, especially like on the liquor stores and the gas stations. We're having more people come in here and talk about it and such, and they're gonna sit there and see what city council's doing and
That night instead of it being
Yes.
buried in the
Yes.
council meetings later.
So,
ultimately, it's their responsibility. And now, when it doesn't take a supermajority to override us, and they don't want to get to where we're in the same room, us vote on it, turn around, and them decide that they want it, and they feel like that it kind of shames us in front of the other people.
So, and
well, that may
To be-
happen anyways.
Yeah.
well, and to be clear, I propose that when we originally talked about it, we talked about us taking a vote and then them taking a vote right behind us, and that, to me, is a bad idea. And that was my proposal. If we're gonna be voting on it back to back,
Yeah.
why don't we just state our opinions, and they're gonna vote on it anyway? Because our vote is just a recommendation anyway, and we can give our recommendations to them without raising our hands.
I know I've talked to several people and stuff that have businesses, and that, friends of mine that have business and stuff, and they talk about the hardest thing in Pearland is maneuvering that gauntlet that they have to run through in order to start to get a business up and running in Pearland. And I don't think we want to be that. I think we want to make it easier for people to come in here and get started in businesses where they don't put in a bunch of money and then all of a sudden we tell them no.
I think that was the real purpose of the committee.
Yes.
I think you convinced me to vote for it.
Our work is through.
No, it isn't. We didn't vote yet.
Now we got to vote.
I mean, something's got to be done to change the process. If 90 days is incredibly long. 30 days may be too short. 30 days may prove that it can't be done in 30 days with going back and forth and with the meeting schedules. It may end up being at 45 days. Just going through the process and how prepared someone comes to the room. They're going to have to spend money to be prepared to go for a CUP anyways. They're going to have to hit the triggers. The first few that come through here and don't hit those, they're going to get postponed, and they're going to push back probably into the 45-day range with the meeting schedules to get back on the CUP meeting list. And both council is going to have to be prepared that the meetings could go longer. And that's definitely, because we talk about details in CUPs. We look at plans, we look at layouts, we look at the details. They've kind of gotten that package in their packages every week from everything, and P and Z voted 6-0. Oh, this must be okay. Let's glance over it. Yeah, looks good, and they vote for it, and it goes through. But, now there's not that, our whole process of going through and lining everything out and presenting it. We cut that time out. It's gonna go somewhere. That review time is gonna go into one meeting now. So, and I do agree that or I've said all along that the 7 of us or 6 of us at the time, whoever it is, we are the voice for the people that don't show up when they get notification, or they're outside of that notification line. And I do like that part of it. You said all along that notifications are good, but when that notification doesn't cross the line, it's our job to step in for the city and speak for the citizens that we represent, whether we know it or not, that opinion. So I'll vote for it. We'll give it a shot. Let's vote. So all that, and we got the whole thing on the
Yes, sir.
on the table.
So at the moment, the motion is for approval of all of the proposed changes for T26 amendments to the UDC.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Motion
Did he vote
passes
for
4-0. If you can let the record state that my yes vote was, I initially was not going to vote yes, but due to the discussion over the voting and
Yes, sir.
The changes that we're making in the voting, even in the old system, were not supermajority required. So the vote is the same no matter what. So I'm good with it.
Yes, sir.
We'll get our say in the meeting, and then council will vote. They're either going to be swayed by the vote or not, or by the comments or not. Okay, moving on to item 4, Council Planning Commission staff discussion. This has changed. Do we have any discussion items? I'm sorry. Going off of here. We got activity report. Anybody?
So, we can discuss pretty much anything during the activity report, correct? That's not on the agenda?
Yes.
Can we, it's been mentioned several times now about the liquor stores and trying to figure out, and I know that y'all did a little bit of research previously to try to get a good feel for density type things, and it was not it was kind of all over the map on other large cities. We might want to do something more to try to put some of these questions to bed, at least talk about them more. I'm not sure what that looks like. I'm not sure if it's a workshop per se, but it's, at least also we need to start talking to council about it, or have some more data that we can provide to council, because I know that 2 or 3 of them asked the question again tonight.
And how would we, to expand on that, not just the liquor stores, but all the CUPs, how would we go about a committee or that to develop guidelines and recommendations for items that conditional use permit should look at in regards to each of these?
So from the planning perspective, the criteria for approval of the CUP are the things that you're supposed to look at. Y'all are looking for more defined criteria than that. I'm going to have to turn that back over to Jay with her experience as a planner instead of me as the legal department.
Well then,
So talking about CUPs, what?
you're looking for more criteria than what's in the UDC now?
Well,
Or
specifically, or it's really on, from what I see, liquor stores and gas stations. Right now, the only additional, the only information that is kind of above and beyond what we get on other ones, is the map showing kind of locations.
You could definitely do more research for the liquor stores.
Right,
And bring you more guidance. I mean, there's sample ordinances out there. There's a lot of research on how alcohol outlets are cited and the density of alcohol outlets. So we can definitely do more research on that and bring it back to you guys, or maybe we can have a workshop or.
So I guess what I'm getting at is we have CUPs in place on, just take a lumberyard, for instance. Okay, when council goes to look at a conditional use permit, you go to that meeting blank. You're going, conditional use permit for why am I looking at this? Why is this? So if we had a checklist for all the items, it's a lot. I understand it's gonna be a lot, but we keep adding them. And there's some specific reason we add uses and we tag them with CUPs.
So are you saying maybe potentially go in the, I'm just trying to be clear, through the UDC and take out some?
No, I'm talking about going through and saying, okay, for a lumberyard, what are the items we're concerned about? And we can put them on a checklist for a lumberyard. So council can look up the lumberyard and ask the questions at the time. These are the concerns in the history of lumberyards that aren't covered in the UDC. Do they apply to this property or not? Do we have this? In liquor stores, we can look at surrounding area. Is it near a church? Is it near a school? Is it near apartment complex? Whatever those items are, is the density 2 liquor stores per square mile? Is it 5? What is that hurdle?
And that will, will require another amendment to the UDC. If you want to add certain criteria and specific.
No, I'm talking about a checklist for council looking over CUPs of recommended items that are concerns that would cause a condition to be added.
Right, and
It's not necessarily an item that has to be met.
Requires UDC.
Right, so I think what you're saying is if staff is going to propose a change to the land use matrix and move something to a C, they need to make sure they tell you why they're moving it to a C.
So this is why, let's just take the lumberyard and say that the height of a certain structure was an issue, and it's not covered anywhere else in the UDC, that we have under lumberyard criteria or items of concern that council would have to look at and go, well, this has been a problem in the past, and again, this could be written into the UDC and we do away with the CUP altogether, if that's the case. Take that check out. We're adding CUP all over the UDC.
I understand.
But we don't know what the conditions are that we're worried about. And we can't tell the developer back here, the business owner, it's a CUP because we're worried about you being too close to a church. We're worried about you being, this building being too tall, or we're worried about.
And I think to do that, you have to have the criteria outlined in your ordinance, your code of ordinance. So for instance, if you want a separate criteria outlined for liquor stores, well then, just like right now, we have the criteria for approval of CUPs, we can break them out by certain uses.
And that's what I'm getting at.
But that will
If that's,
require a change.
if it's, exactly, which does away with the concern, which takes the CUP, basically makes the CUP, does council want it or not? Because
So it becomes a land use issue and not what are the conditions issue.
Right.
You don't have to deal with the negative effects and,
if you're gonna put in a liquor store, you're gonna do X, Y, and Z. It's not gonna be near a school, it's not gonna be near a church, it's gonna be X number of feet from this, it's gonna this.
Right.
All the conditions.
And it can't be within so many distance of another one.
I think we're kind of putting the cart
think
before
we're
the horse a
getting-
little bit.
yeah.
I kind of want to see what some recommended practices are now before we start getting into changing.
But what I'm
UDC.
getting at is to the business owner, they're coming into Pearland and they're saying, we're telling them, oh, you're gonna open a liquor store, you need to have a CUP, and they go, what does that mean? And we can't tell them.
Well,
What we need to know is why. That's what we want to know why you need a CUP.
It boils down to, do we want that,
Well, and-
truthfully, it boils down to, do you want the business here or not?
So-
And that's a council decision.
That was an issue that was discussed. You can change the CUP process to remove those conditions and say, as long as you get your height in, as long as you get your distance from the neighbors in, as long as you control your noise, this will be an automatic approval, or whatever the potential conditions could be.
I think this is
I don't believe that that came out of the CUP process. I wasn't in the process to say why it didn't go there, but that was one of the options that was considered. So staff in their reports, and I think they do this in their initial report, they tell you, we recommend denial because of, and then they outline those conditions, or they say, we recommend approval as long as you attach these following conditions, and that's staff's attempt to make sure that you understand the why, and it's always talking about the effects. It's almost always talking about adjacency effects. But to do it for every potential use would expand the CUP criteria.
But we don't have any problem adding that C to the columns.
No, sir.
That's
Because we have the 8 criteria that are listed, and then staff attempts to tie the concern to one of those 8 issues. So using the liquor store proliferation that you're talking about, multiple liquor stores in one area changes the character of the neighborhood. That's a CUP criteria. So instead of saying, here's the ratio, or here's the number, it becomes, and at some point, as the appointed recommending body, you have to use your discretion to say, I think this one does change the character of the neighborhood because we have X in this number or within this distance. So,
and that's certainly the case on the ones that, are right across the street from each other. That changes the character. Now you look at a corner and you see liquor stores.
So as some things, it's very easy, I think, for the planning department to talk about the secondary effects of, and, on-site consumption, off-site consumption of alcohol, or this type of business in this area. I know that there are studies on those. I don't know how many of those studies talk about the secondary effects of off-premise consumption for specific liquor sales in comparison to beer and wine sales.
I know it sounds crazy, but, David has mentioned before, I wish there was something we could do about mattress stores, because there's mattress stores on every corner.
Yes, sir.
Well, replace mattress with liquor and overlook the fact you gotta have a liquor license. What's the difference?
So if you think that an abundance of mattress stores on every
we've done it for
intersection
gas
changes the character of the neighborhood, then you would recommend to move mattress stores to CUP and use that same criteria.
And that, that's looked upon as ridiculous, because mattress, that's business, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But we put the stigmata of liquor on there, and all of a sudden, we need to look at this harder, because we don't want Pearland known as the liquor capital of the world. Again, once they start getting approved and council approves them and they approve them, and there's liquor stores on every corner, certainly, they're not all gonna make it. I agree with that, but I just don't wanna get to the point where I drive down the street and all I see is liquor stores. I wanna say no to them, straight up. I mean, how many liquor stores do you need to have within a mile drive? Yeah, I told somebody I can buy a bottle of liquor quicker than I can get a 2x4 in the city of Pearland, a lot quicker. It's more useful. So, I'll quit talking. We already voted on it. But we
I can bring some best practices. There's some studies out there, and there's ordinances that are.
But I think we need to have a workshop on it, is what I'm getting at.
I think so too. Workshop would be something we need to have on it.
Sometime when we have a short meeting.
Council price included, so there's not the disjointed.
Yeah, no, it definitely needs to be a joint workshop with council, because
It's all here the same
they're
thing,
fixing to,
especially if they work.
they're fixing to take off, and they're gonna be in the business of CUPs now, which they haven't been, for the most part. So, I think that's a good idea to get it on the agenda and get their get their opinion of what we need to look at for these different businesses. Because I really want to hear from our elected officials at what they think, or, like I said before, if they want to go through the list and take the Cs off, they need to do it.
Yes, sir.
That would simplify things for the businesses coming in the most. They come in and go, you're in the zone, you got it.
With the liquor stores and such, what I know everybody sits there and says that, it was voted by the people and all that type of stuff. But when it was voted by the people, when there was people that sat at this sitting where we're sitting right now, when they were asked questions about liquor stores and such, I don't think the people thought that we were going to get the type of liquor stores that we had. I think they had a more grandiose type idea of having larger liquor stores. I also think that they were told that, that they were going to keep control of it and such as that. That's the reason for the CUP. That's the reason why a lot of people did vote for it. And up until the last couple of times, we haven't done that. We've rubber stamped them because there wasn't any. And then all of a sudden we got hit. Like I said, everything was, I know that you're really not supposed to count Friendswood, but when you count Friendswood, you've got 8 liquor stores from the corner of Dixie Farm Road and 518. I can be to 8 different liquor stores in less than 15 minutes. When is enough is enough? So.
Okay, where are we at?
I think we should be.
I think this was for future discussion items for upcoming P&Zs.
Enough.
So other than liquor store criteria for CUPs, were there additional
Well, we would
I think it
need,
would be good for the workshop to have a list of all the CUPs without having to flip through the giant maze of indexes. Just to have all the Cs listed. And in that workshop, everybody can go through that list. If anything pops out of concerns, we need to talk about them. As if not, why do you have a conditional use permit if it's not really a concern, if it's covered in the UDC?
Having 2 workshops. We having 2 workshops.
If we do that, I'll voice my opinion, man. I think it's getting a little, I think there's reasons for them that would possibly get missed in a giant workshop to cover every CUP. I think we should break it up and at least, I know that the liquor store right now is an issue. Everybody wants to have more
Liquor
information, but I
station
think
and
what
gas
people want
stations
is.
are too.
Yeah. So,
I think it'd be,
Liquor stores and gas stations are 2 that are hottest right now.
I think it would be a good idea to have the list, but I don't think we can discuss all of them at one time.
right.
Well, I think it'd be good to see the list. I think council see a list of all the CUPs, every single use, in a alphabetized list. They see, look at what we've created in the UDC.
I think we're talking about maybe 2 things right now. So one is how we're going to handle the criteria for liquor stores, and then the CUPs as a whole. So we can definitely have a workshop or multiple workshops.
Certainly, we've seen more CUPs for liquor stores in the last few months than we've seen CUPs for gas stations or any of the other CUPs in the last year.
And while I understand the concern with the CUP, I would just say that I think that the CUP committee, ad hoc CUP committee, had an opportunity to look at what's required for a CUP. So while you're asking for a workshop to talk about those issues, I think the ad hoc committee has already done that. And if they wanted to change those things, I would have assumed that they would have said, no, we don't need. Again, I was only at the first 2 meetings, so I defer to Thomas on that.
I don't necessarily recall going through and saying, looking at every type of property and saying, does it need a CUP or not? I don't think that was necessarily discussed. I think it was more about the process and how we.
I think I asked that question and the answer was no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That the overall list was not looked at.
The
Okay.
list that was
And-
looked at was. what
Absolutely, staff can provide a list of information for you that lists everything that has CUPs or requires a CUP. So we can generate that. We'll get that to you in one of our outgoing packets.
In your free time?
Yeah, right.
I don't think we have anything else left, do we? Next meeting?
Do we have any actual like, commissioner activity?
It's dwindling. Next meeting's August 21st. Okay, we'll adjourn at 10:13.
August 21st, first day of school, isn't it? GIC, first day of school.
Eclipse, a few other good things.
It's gonna be a busy, crazy day.